I had always been drawn to the tales that surrounded Old Hollow House, a decrepit mansion on the outskirts of town. They said it was cursed, that the spirits of its former inhabitants still roamed its shadowy halls. I never believed in ghosts until the night I decided to explore it myself. As I approached the house, the wind howled, sending a chill down my spine. The moonlight barely pierced the dense canopy of trees, casting eerie shadows on the ground. The old wooden door creaked open as if welcoming me into its sinister embrace. I stepped inside, the darkness swallowing me whole. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of decay lingered. I shone my flashlight around the room, revealing peeling wallpaper and shattered furniture. But what caught my attention was a faint whisper, like a soft breeze carrying secrets. I paused, straining my ears, but it faded away. I dismissed it as my imagination and continued deeper into the house. As I made my way through the dimly lit corridors, I felt an unsettling presence. The whispers grew louder, echoing off the walls. They seemed to beckon me, pulling me toward the staircase that spiraled upward into darkness. My heart raced. Was it fear or curiosity? I ascended the stairs, each creak beneath my feet sounding like a warning. At the top, I discovered a long hallway lined with closed doors. The whispers intensified, now sounding like a chorus of voices, pleading, warning, and crying out. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob of the first room. I slowly turned the knob, and the door swung open with a groan. Inside, the air turned icy, and an overwhelming sense of despair enveloped me. I stepped in, and as I did, the door slammed shut behind me. Panic surged through me, and I spun around, but the door wouldn't budge. In the corner of the room stood an old mirror, its surface cloudy and cracked. As I approached it, the whispers transformed into clear words. "Help us! Help us!" My reflection wavered, and I could see shadows moving behind me, shapes dancing just out of sight. I turned, but nothing was there. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The whispers swirled around me, growing frantic. "We are trapped. Free us." I felt a chill run down my spine as the temperature dropped further. My breath misted in the air. Suddenly, the mirror flashed with images, families, laughter, and then terror. I saw fleeting glimpses of the house in its former glory, then flashes of chaos, of people screaming, running, and finally, silence. The last image was a woman, her face twisted in anguish, her eyes pleading directly at me. With newfound determination, I demanded, "What do you want?" The air shimmered, and a voice, soft yet powerful, whispered, "Find the heart of the house. Only then can we rest." I felt an insatiable urge to uncover the truth. I pushed against the door with all my strength, and to my surprise, it swung open. I dashed back into the hallway, the whispers now guiding me. They led me to the end of the corridor, where a heavy door stood slightly ajar. With a deep breath, I pushed it open. The room was filled with dust and darkened corners, but at its center stood an ancient chest, intricately carved with symbols I couldn't decipher. The whispers crescendoed, urging me closer. I knelt beside the chest, and as I lifted the lid, a rush of cold air enveloped me. Inside lay a collection of tattered journals and a small, ornate locket. I opened the locket, revealing a faded photograph of the woman from a mirror. Her name was Elena, and I realized she must have been the heart of this house. As I read through the journal entries, I learned of her tragic fate, the betrayal, the loss, the curse that bound her and her family to this house. But now, I held the key to their freedom. I could feel their presence surrounding me. anticipation mingling with desperation. With a steady voice, I whispered, "I will help you find peace." The whispers turned to a gentle hum, a sound of gratitude that filled the room. I gathered the journals and the locket, vowing to share their story with the world. As I made my way to the door, I felt the air lighten. The oppressive weight that had filled the house began to lift. I stepped out into the night, the whispers now transformed into soft sighs of relief. Old Hollow House would no longer be just a haunted memory. It would become a testament to the stories and souls within. And as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had not just entered the house. I had become part of its legacy. I had always been fascinated by the old cemetery on the edge of town. It was a place shrouded in mystery, where the weathered tombstones whispered stories of those long forgotten. But there was one grave that drew me in like a moth to a flame. A crumbling headstone marked with the name Abigail Hargrove, the last resident of a family that had mysteriously vanished a century ago. On a chilly autumn evening, curiosity got the better of me. Armed with a flashlight and a notebook, I made my way to the cemetery, the crunch of leaves beneath my feet echoing in the stillness. The air was thick with anticipation, and I could feel the weight of countless eyes watching me from the shadows. As I approached Abigail's grave, a gust of wind swept through the cemetery, causing the branches to sway ominously. The inscription on the headstone was barely legible, but I could make out the words, "Forever in silence, forgotten by time." A shiver ran down my spine. I knelt beside the grave, brushing away the moss that had claimed it, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper, almost like a sigh carried by the wind. "Help us, please." The voice was soft yet urgent. My breath caught in my throat. Was I imagining things? I glanced around, but the cemetery was still, save for the rustling leaves. Determined to uncover the truth, I began to dig near the headstone, my fingers trembling as I unearthed the cold, damp earth. After a few minutes of labor, my shovel struck something hard. I cleared away the dirt, revealing a small, weathered box covered in intricate designs that seemed to shimmer in the fading light. As I pried it open, a chill swept through the air, and I was met with a collection of old letters and a locket. The letters were penned by Abigail herself, filled with despair and longing. They spoke of a dark family secret, of a curse that had plagued the Hargroves for generations. But the last letter chilled me to the bone. "If you find this, know that we are trapped beneath the ground, bound by secrets that refuse to die." My heart raced. The whispers were growing louder, more insistent. "Help us. Free us." I slipped the locket around my neck and felt a sudden warmth radiate from it. It was as if the spirits of the forgotten were awakening, urging me to seek the truth. I stood up and gazed around the cemetery, my mind racing. Could there be more buried secrets here? Driven by a sense of urgency, I ventured deeper into the cemetery, flashlight flickering as the night closed in. The whispers led me to a section of the graveyard that felt different, an area overgrown and neglected, where the tombstones leaned at odd angles as if trying to escape the earth. I stumbled upon a hidden stone slab partially covered in vines. My heart pounded as I pushed against it, the slab shifting with an otherworldly groan. I felt the air grow heavy, a sense of dread wrapping around me like a shroud. As I descended into the darkness below, the whispers intensified, swirling around me in a chaotic symphony. The narrow passageway opened into a vast underground chamber, illuminated by an eerie glow. The walls were lined with tombs, each inscribed with the names of the Hargrove family members, forgotten souls trapped in the depths of the earth. In the center stood an altar, and upon it lay an ancient book, its pages worn and fragile. I approached cautiously, the whispers now pleading for attention. As I opened the book, I saw the family's history unfold, betrayal, greed, and a dark ritual that had sealed their fates. The last entry detailed a horrific sacrifice made to protect their legacy, a decision that had condemned their souls to wander the earth, forgotten and tormented. To break the curse, it read, one must willingly take the place of the lost. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I didn't want to believe it, but the whispers became frantic, swirling around me like a tempest. Save us. Set us free. The weight of their despair pressed down on me, and I could feel their pain resonating within me. In that moment, I realized the choice I had to make. To free the Hargrove family, I had to confront the darkness that had consumed them. I took a deep breath, clutching the locket tightly. I will help you, I vowed, my voice steady amidst the chaos. As I recited the incantation from the book, the air crackled with energy. The chamber began to shake, and shadows danced across the walls. The whispers crescendoed into a haunting chorus, urging me on. I felt the ground tremble beneath me, a powerful force pulling at my very essence. In an explosion of light, the spirits of the Hargrove family emerged, their forms shimmering like mist. Thank you, they whispered in unison, their voices now calm and serene. We are free. As the light faded, I found myself back in the cemetery, the box and letters clutched in my hands. The air felt lighter. The weight of the forgotten souls lifted. I realized that I had not only uncovered a dark secret, but had also given these lost souls the peace they had long sought. As I walked away from the cemetery, the night felt different, less oppressive, filled with a sense of hope. I would ensure that the stories of the Hargrove family would never be forgotten again. Growing up on Maple Street, I always heard the whispers about the Shadow Man. They said he prowled the neighborhood at night, his presence felt but never seen, a dark figure lurking just beyond the edge of light. I never believed those stories. They felt like the kind of tales kids tell to scare each other. That was until the night I encountered him. It was a crisp autumn evening, the leaves rustling like whispers in the wind. My friends and I were gathered at my house for a sleepover, but as the clock ticked past midnight, the mood shifted. We dared each other to venture outside, to see if the stories were true. Let's go to the old oak tree, suggested Jake, his eyes glinting with mischief. They say that's where he appears. My heart raced at the thought, but curiosity outweighed my fear. We grabbed flashlights and crept out into the night, the chill of the October air wrapping around us like a shroud. As we made our way down Maple Street, the streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced along the pavement. We reached the old oak tree, its gnarled branches stretching like skeletal fingers toward the sky. The air felt thicker here, charged with an unexplainable energy. "Do you hear that?" whispered Sarah, her voice trembling. We all paused, straining to listen. A silence, guttural whisper echoed through the darkness, almost like a warning. "It's just the wind," I said, though I wasn't convinced. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through, sending chills down my spine. I shone my flashlight around, the beam cutting through the darkness. That's when I saw him, a fleeting shadow at the edge of my vision. My heart pounded in my chest. "Did you see that?" I gasped, pointing toward the shadow, but when I turned, it was gone. We huddled together, fear creeping in. "Let's go back," Jake suggested, his bravado fading. But before we could move, the whispering grew louder, swirling around us like a storm. "Run," I shouted, and we bolted down the street, our laughter turning into terrified screams. As we dashed toward my house, I glanced back, and there he was, a figure cloaked in darkness, standing beneath the oak tree, watching. My breath caught in my throat. He seemed to be growing larger, more menacing, as if feeding off our fear. We burst through the front door, slamming it shut behind us. Our hearts raced as we leaned against the door, trying to catch our breath. "Did we really just see that?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with terror. It felt so real. We decided to regroup in the living room, the dim light casting long shadows across the walls. As we sat on the floor, the whispers returned, this time echoing through the house. "He's here," I whispered, panic rising within me. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness. A chilling silence enveloped the room, and I felt an icy presence wash over me. The whispers turned into a low growl, reverberating in my bones. My flashlight flickered erratically before dying, leaving us in pitch black. "Stay close," I urged, gripping Sarah's hand tightly. The tension in the room was palpable, a thick cloud of dread. I could feel something lurking just beyond our vision, waiting for the right moment to strike. Then, out of the silence, a voice emerged, a deep, gravelly tone that sent shivers down my spine. "You invited me in." The words echoed around us, sending us scrambling for the nearest exit. I bolted for the front door, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if an invisible force held it shut. "Help! Let us out!" Jake cried, panic rising. The shadows seemed to thicken, coiling around us like a living thing. I could feel the shadow man's presence closing in, a suffocating darkness that pressed against my chest. In that moment, I remembered the stories. The only way to banish the shadow man was to confront him, to show no fear. "We're not afraid of you," I shouted, my voice trembling but resolute. "You have no power over us." The room fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting slightly. The shadows flickered, retreating for a moment. I could sense the shadow man hesitating, caught off guard by my defiance. "You think you can dismiss me?" he hissed, his voice echoing with malice. "Your time is over," I declared, my voice stronger now. "You can't hurt us anymore." The air crackled with tension, and the shadows began to swirl violently around us, but I stood my ground. Then, in a flash, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the room. The shadow man let out a piercing shriek, the sound reverberating through the house. He began to dissipate, his form breaking apart like smoke in the wind, and with one final howl, he vanished entirely. The door swung open, and we stumbled outside, gasping for air. The night was still again, the whispers replaced by the rustling of leaves. We looked at one another, relief washing over us, but we knew we had faced something real, something that lived in the shadows of Maple Street. As we stood there, the moonlight casting a silvery glow on our faces, I realized the legend of the Shadow Man would live on. But we had taken a stand. We had confronted the darkness and emerged stronger. And from that night forward, we would never forget the power of courage against fear. From the moment I stepped into the dollmaker's shop, an unsettling feeling washed over me. The air was thick with the scent of varnish and something else, something metallic. Rows of dolls lined the shelves, their glassy eyes staring blankly ahead, as if they were watching my every move. Each one was meticulously crafted, from the delicate porcelain faces to the intricately designed outfits. But there was something about them that sent shivers down my spine. I had heard the rumors about Mr. Galloway, the reclusive dollmaker who lived at the edge of town. They said he infused his creations with more than just craftsmanship. He poured his soul into them, whispering dark secrets as he worked. It was said that those who owned his dolls experienced strange occurrences, unsettling dreams, and sometimes even madness. Despite the warnings, I was drawn to a particular doll, a hauntingly beautiful figure dressed in a tattered gown, her face cracked but still hauntingly serene. I couldn't help myself. I purchased it, ignoring the shopkeeper's warning that it came with a curse. That night, I placed the doll on my dresser, its gaze fixed on me as I tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I was plagued by vivid nightmares. Visions of the doll maker hunched over his workbench, his fingers stained with paint and blood, whispering incantations into the ears of his creations. "Take care of her, she needs you." I heard him murmur in my dreams, his voice echoing in the darkness. I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, the doll's eyes glinting in the moonlight. It felt as if she was alive, waiting for something or someone. Days passed, and I tried to ignore the creeping dread that settled in my chest. But strange things began to happen. Objects in my home would go missing, only to reappear in odd places. I would wake up to find the doll move from its spot, always closer to my bed. The shadows in my room seemed to deepen, coiling around me like a serpent ready to strike. One night, I decided to confront my fears. I sat in front of the doll, determined to break whatever hold it had on me. "You don't scare me," I declared, my voice steady despite the tremble in my hands. "You're just a doll," as if in response. The room grew colder, and the lights flickered. The doll's eyes glinted with a malevolent light, and I could have sworn I saw a faint smile on her cracked lips. Panic surged through me, but I held my ground. "You're not real," I shouted. That's when I heard it, a soft, melodic giggle echoing from the shadows. I spun around, heart racing. "Who's there?" I called, but the only reply was silence. The giggle grew louder, more sinister, and I realized it was coming from the doll. Suddenly, the doll's head tilted slightly, and I felt a cold breeze wash over me. "Help me," it whispered, a voice both sweet and terrifying. "Find him, break the curse." I stumbled back, horrified. Was I losing my mind? The doll couldn't speak. Yet, the more I looked at her, the more I felt an inexplicable urge to obey. I had to know the truth about the doll maker and his creations. Determined, I visited the town library the next day, searching for any information on Mr. Galloway. As I delved into the dusty archives, I uncovered a chilling history. The doll maker had once been a beloved figure, creating toys for children. But after a tragic accident that claimed the life of his daughter, he became a recluse, his heart consumed by grief. Legend had it that he sought to bring her back, using dark magic to infuse his dolls with her spirit. But in doing so, he had unleashed a curse, one that bound the souls of his creations to him, forever trapped in a cycle of torment. The final entry in the journal sent chills down my spine. The only way to break the curse is to confront the doll maker in his lair. My heart raced. I had to go to him. I had to free the souls trapped within the dolls, including the one that haunted me. That night, I gathered my courage and made my way to the dollmaker's shop. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the deserted street. As I approached the shop, I could feel the weight of countless eyes upon me, those of the dolls, watching silently from their perches. I entered the shop, the familiar scent of varnish and decay overwhelming me. The dolls seemed to whisper, urging me forward. I found myself drawn to a hidden door at the back, partially ajar and shrouded in darkness. Taking a deep breath, I pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and a single flickering candle illuminated the room. There stood Mr. Galloway, hunched over a workbench, his hands stained with paint and something darker. He looked up, his eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. "Why have you come?" he rasped, his voice a mere whisper. "Do you seek to claim a doll for yourself?" "No," I replied, my voice trembling. "I'm here to free them, to end the curse." A flicker of recognition crossed his face, and he straightened, revealing the lines of anguish etched into his skin. "You don't understand," he said, sorrowful yet defiant. "They are my only connection to her. Without them, I am lost. But they're trapped," I insisted. "You must let them go." He hesitated, and in that moment, I felt the energy shift in the room. The dolls around us began to stir, their eyes glinting with life. "Help us," they whispered in unison, their voices merging into a haunting chorus. With newfound resolve, I stepped forward. "You must face your grief, Mr. Galloway. Let them go, and you can find peace." The room fell silent, the weight of his sorrow pressing down on us both. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. "You're right," he murmured. "I've been a prisoner of my own making." As he reached for the doll I had brought, I felt a surge of energy. The room lit up with a brilliant light, and the dolls began to dance, swirling around us like a storm. The curse was breaking, the souls finally free. In a blinding flash, the dolls transformed, their features softening, releasing their trapped spirits. I felt a warmth envelop me, a sense of relief washing over the room. The shadows receded, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Mr. Galloway fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with a mix of sorrow and gratitude. "You freed them and me." As I made my way out of the shop, the dawn broke, casting a warm glow over Maple Street. I knew the legend of the doll maker would linger, but now it was a tale of redemption rather than terror. I had faced my fears and helped a tortured soul find peace, and I would carry that memory with me forever. I never should have agreed to go camping in those woods. Ever since I heard the locals whisper about them, I felt a shiver run down my spine. They called it the Whispering Pines, a seemingly serene forest that had a dark reputation. Tales of missing hikers, strange sounds echoing at night, and a cabin that was said to be cursed. Despite the warnings, my friends and I thought we were invincible. We packed our gear and drove out to the woods, excitement bubbling in our chests. The sun was setting as we set up camp, the trees casting long shadows over our makeshift site. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but the deeper we ventured, the more the woods seemed to come alive around us. As night fell, we gathered around the campfire, roasting marshmallows and sharing ghost stories. But I couldn't shake the sensation that we were being watched. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying faint whispers that beckoned me to listen closely. Just the wind, I told myself, but there was something unsettling in the air. After a few hours, my friends decided to explore deeper into the woods, urging me to join them. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. "Let's find that cabin," Jake suggested, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "It'll be fun." With a mix of excitement and dread, we ventured into the darkness, our flashlights cutting through the thick fog that had rolled in. The deeper we walked, the more the atmosphere shifted. The trees loomed overhead like silent sentinels, their twisted branches forming grotesque shapes. The whispers grew louder, almost forming words, but I couldn't quite make them out. After what felt like hours of wandering, we stumbled upon the cabin, a decrepit structure hidden beneath a canopy of vines and moss. Its windows were shattered, and the door hung ajar, creaking ominously in the breeze. "This is it," Jake exclaimed, pushing the door open with a loud groan. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the scent of decay. Dust motes danced in the beam of our flashlights, and the floorboards creaked beneath our feet. The walls were lined with strange markings, symbols I couldn't recognize. "This place gives me the creeps," Sarah said, her voice shaky. We explored cautiously, each room revealing artifacts of a life long forgotten. Old photographs, broken furniture, and a fireplace filled with ash. But there was something else, something darker lurking in the corners of the cabin. I felt an inexplicable urge to leave, but my friends were too engrossed in their exploration. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back room. We jumped, hearts racing. "What was that?" I whispered, my instincts screaming for us to get out. We moved toward the noise, the air growing colder with each step. As we entered the back room, the atmosphere shifted entirely. Shadows danced along the walls, and an oppressive weight settled over us. In the center of the room stood an old mirror, its surface dark and cracked. I felt drawn to it, an irresistible pull that made my heart pound. "Don't look into it," I warned, but my voice felt distant. Jake stepped closer, mesmerized. "It's just an old mirror. What's the worst that could happen?" I wanted to scream for him to stop, but the words wouldn't come. As he reached out to touch the glass, a chill swept through the room, and the whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of voices. "Get out, leave now," they pleaded, but it was too late. The mirror began to ripple, shadows swirling within it like a storm. Jake's reflection twisted, a grotesque version of himself with hollow eyes and a twisted grin. "Help me," he cried, but it was a hollow plea. In a panic, I grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her back. "We have to go. Now." We turned to flee, but the cabin seemed to shift around us, the walls closing in, trapping us in a nightmarish labyrinth. The whispers grew louder, echoing our fears, drowning us in a sea of despair. We rushed through the rooms, frantically searching for an exit, but every door led us back to the mirror. I could feel the darkness closing in, its tendrils wrapping around my mind, whispering secrets of despair and hopelessness. "We're never getting out." Sarah screamed, her voice cracking. Just when I thought all hope was lost, I remembered the symbols on the walls. I had seen one of them in a book about ancient rituals. "The mirror. We have to break it," I shouted, desperation fueling my courage. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I grabbed a heavy chair and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered with a deafening crash, and a blinding light erupted from shards. The darkness howled in rage, the whispers turning into screams as the shadows recoiled, releasing us from their grasp. We stumbled outside, gasping for air, the night sky sprawling above us like a blanket of stars. The woods felt different now, quieter, as if the malevolent presence had been banished. We didn't stop running until we reached our campsite, collapsing on the ground, hearts pounding. As dawn broke, casting light through the trees, I looked back at the woods, knowing the cabin was still there, waiting for the next unsuspecting souls to wander in. We had escaped the cabin of endless nightmares, but I knew it would forever haunt my dreams, a reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond the light. The old manor stood at the end of Willow Lane, shrouded in legends and whispers. They said it was haunted, that the spirits of those who once lived there still roamed its halls, trapped in a cycle of sorrow. As a local historian, I was drawn to its mystery, eager to uncover the truth behind the echoes of the past. On a chilly autumn day, I finally gathered the courage to enter the manor. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and decay. As I stepped over the threshold, the door creaked ominously, as if warning me to turn back. I brushed off the feeling, determined to document my findings. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy, almost suffocating. Dust motes danced in the dim light, filtering through the cracked windows. I pulled out my flashlight and began to explore, each room revealing remnants of a life long forgotten. Faded photographs, tattered furniture, and a grand piano covered in a thick layer of dust. As I wandered through the dimly lit corridors, I began to hear faint sounds, whispers carried on the wind, echoing through the empty rooms. "Help us," they seemed to plead, chilling my blood. I paused, scanning the shadows, but found nothing. Just my imagination, I told myself. I continued my exploration, arriving at a room that felt different from the others. The air was colder, and the whispers grew louder. As I stepped inside, I felt a presence, a weight in the air that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. In the center of the room stood a mirror, its surface cloudy with age, reflecting a distorted image of myself. Suddenly, the whispers morphed into clearer voices. "You shouldn't be here," they warned, echoing off the walls. My heart raced. "Who's there?" I called, but the only response was a chilling silence. I approached the mirror, drawn to it as if it held the answers I sought. As I peered into its depths, the reflection shifted, revealing the room as it once was, vibrant, filled with life. In the mirror, I saw a woman, her face pale and sorrowful, reaching out as if trying to escape. "Help me," she mouthed silently. I stumbled back, fear gripping my heart. "What do you want?" I whispered, desperate for answers. The air grew colder, and suddenly, the mirror shattered, shards flying across the room. I gasped, heart pounding. In that moment, the whispers turned into screams, echoing around me as shadows swirled, forming indistinct figures. I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, trapping me inside. The room darkened, and I felt cold fingers brush against my skin. "You cannot leave," a voice hissed, filled with despair. Panic surged through me. "Let me out," I screamed, pounding on the door, but it wouldn't budge. In the chaos, I remembered the stories I'd read about the manor, stories of tragedy and loss. The woman in the mirror had once lived here, her life cut short by betrayal. "I'm here to help you," I shouted, desperation lacing my voice. "Tell me what you need." The shadows paused, and the whispers faded into a low hum. "Find the truth," they urged. "Set us free." I felt a flicker of hope. "I will," I promised, my voice steady. "I'll uncover what happened to you." In that moment, the door swung open, and the shadows receded, releasing me from their grasp. I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for breath. Determined to uncover the truth, I scoured the manor, searching for clues. I found old letters hidden in a drawer, revealing a tale of love and betrayal, secrets buried deep in the family's history. The woman in the mirror, Lydia, had been wronged, her spirit bound to the manor by the pain of her past. As night fell, I returned to the room where I had first encountered the ghostly whispers. I set up my recorder, hoping to capture her voice. "Lydia," I called softly, "I'm here to listen. Tell me your story." The air grew heavy once more, and the whispers returned, swirling around me. "You must know," Lydia's voice echoed, filled with longing. "I was betrayed by the one I loved. He took everything from me." With each word, the atmosphere shifted, the shadows weaving tales of heartache and loss. I listened intently, my heart aching for her pain. She spoke of a love that turned toxic, of secrets hidden away, and of a life that ended too soon. As the clock struck midnight, I felt a surge of energy in the room. "You can be free," I whispered. "Let go of the past." The shadows began to swirl, and I could feel the weight of Lydia's sorrow lifting. In that moment, I reached for the mirror shards scattered on the floor, holding them tightly. "This is your truth," I said, my voice firm. "You deserve to be remembered, not trapped." With a final echoing scream, the shadows dissipated, and Lydia's figure appeared before me, glowing with a soft light. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "You've set me free." And just like that, she vanished, leaving behind a warm glow that filled the room. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a sense of peace. The manor, once filled with sorrow, now felt alive with echoes of hope. As I left the manor, I knew the ghosts that had once haunted its halls could finally rest. I had uncovered the truth, and in doing so, I had helped them find their peace. The echoes of the past would always remain, but now they sang a different song, one of redemption and release. It was a cold, misty evening when I found myself standing at the abandoned train station, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows on the cracked pavement. The locals had warned me about the Midnight Express, a train that was said to run only once a year on this very night, carrying souls long lost. Curiosity gnawed at me, and I was determined to uncover the truth behind the ghostly legend. As the clock struck midnight, a low rumble echoed through the air, sending a shiver down my spine. I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet, and then, through the thick fog, the train appeared, a magnificent steam locomotive, dark and imposing, its windows glowing with a ghostly light. I hesitated for a moment, a sense of dread creeping over me, but my curiosity propelled me forward. I climbed aboard the train, the door creaking open as if inviting me into its depths. The interior was dimly lit, adorned with plush velvet seats and ornate decorations that seemed frozen in time. I was alone, or so I thought. As I settled into a seat, a chill swept through the carriage, and I could sense an unseen presence lurking in the shadows. The train jolted to life, the whistle piercing the silence, and we were off, the tracks clattering beneath us. The scenery outside blurred into a haze of darkness, and the air grew heavy with anticipation. In the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement, a figure seated across from me, cloaked in shadows. "Are you the last passenger?" the figure asked, its voice a haunting whisper that sent chills down my spine. I nodded, trying to mask my fear. "What is this place?" "The train carries those who have unfinished business," it replied, its face obscured. "Tonight is a night of reckoning." As we sped through the night, I felt a strange energy enveloping me, a mix of excitement and dread. I leaned closer to the figure, desperate for answers. "What happened to the people who ride this train?" "They are bound to their regrets," it said. "Each stop reveals a piece of their past, and only when they confront their demons can they find peace." The train began to slow, and I could see a faint light glowing in the distance. "We're stopping." I realized, my heart racing. The figure nodded solemnly. As the train came to a halt, I glanced out the window and saw a familiar scene. A quaint little house surrounded by trees. It was my childhood home, a place I hadn't visited in years, filled with memories I had long buried. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped out. My younger self, filled with innocence and hope. "Go to her," the shadowy figure urged. "You have something to resolve." With a deep breath, I stepped off the train and approached my past self. "What do you want?" she asked, her eyes wide with confusion. "I want to apologize," I said, my voice trembling. "I should have been there for you. I let fear guide my choices, and I abandoned the dreams we once had." The air shimmered around us, and I could feel the weight of regret pressing down on my chest. My younger self looked at me with a mix of sadness and understanding. "I know," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "But it's too late." "No, it's not," I insisted, desperation fueling my words. "I can change. I can live for both of us. I can honor our dreams." Suddenly, the ground trembled and the world around us began to shift. The house faded into the mist, and the train whistle echoed in the distance. "You must choose," the shadow figure called out from the train. "Will you let go of your past, or will you remain forever haunted by it?" In that moment, I felt a surge of strength. I turned to my younger self and said, "I will live. I will chase our dreams and make them a reality. I promise you that." The mist swirled around us, and I could feel the warmth of acceptance enveloping me. My younger self smiled, a look of relief washing over her face. "Then go," she said softly. "You're free now." As the world around me dissolved, I felt a rush of energy, and I was back on the train, the shadowy figure watching me with a hint of approval. "You faced your past," it said. "Now you can move forward." The train jolted, and we began to speed away, leaving behind the house and the echoes of my childhood. I turned to the figure, my heart racing. "What happens now?" I asked. "You are the last passenger," it replied, its voice a soothing whisper. "But your journey is just beginning." As the train roared through the night, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known in years. The shadows that had once haunted me were now fading, replaced by a lightness in my heart. I had confronted my past, and in doing so, I found the strength to embrace the future. As dawn broke, the train slowed to a stop, and I stepped off on a solid ground, the sun rising in the distance. I turned back to look at the train, but it had vanished into thin air, leaving only echoes of its haunting presence behind. With newfound determination, I walked away from the station, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The Midnight Express had carried me through the darkness, but now I was free to write my own story. A story filled with hope, dreams, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. As an art historian, I had devoted my life to uncovering the secrets of forgotten masterpieces. My latest assignment led me to the Riverside Gallery, a once glorious museum now shrouded in rumors of cursed art. I had heard whispers of paintings that could draw the viewer into their depths, trapping their souls forever. Intrigued, I could not resist the call to explore. The gallery loomed before me, its facade crumbling, vines creeping up the walls like fingers clutching a dying heart. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors, and a chill swept over me. The air was stale, filled with the scent of dust and decay. As I stepped inside, the faint sound of creaking would echo through the empty halls. I wandered through the dimly lit corridors, my flashlight beam dancing across the walls adorned with peeling paintings. Each one seemed to watch me, their eyes following my every move. I shivered but pressed on, drawn to a room at the end of the hall where a single portrait hung on the wall. A striking painting of a woman with piercing green eyes and a sorrowful expression. The Lady of Shadows, the plaque read. I couldn't help but feel an inexplicable connection to her, as if she were calling out to me. Approaching the painting, I reached out to touch the frame, and suddenly, a wave of energy coursed through me. The room spun, and I stumbled back, gasping for breath. When I regained my composure, I found myself standing in a dimly lit chamber, the painting now behind me, alive and pulsing with energy. The woman from the portrait stepped out, her features ethereal, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "You've come to free me, haven't you?" she said, her voice a melodious whisper that sent chills racing down my spine. "Free you?" I stammered, bewildered. "What do you mean?" "I am trapped in this painting, bound by a curse that has lasted centuries," she explained, her eyes filled with longing. "Only a true believer in art can break the spell. You must uncover the truth behind my sorrow." Before I could respond, the walls around us began to shift, revealing scenes of a life long past. Ballrooms filled with laughter, gardens blooming with colors, and moments of despair that led to her entrapment. I felt as if I were being pulled into the memories, the air thick with emotion. I watched as she danced with a man, their eyes locked in adoration, only to see betrayal seep into their love. He had painted her, but jealousy had twisted his heart, leading him to curse her as he trapped her within the canvas. The vision faded, and I was left with a heavy heart. "You must find the artist's final brushstroke," she urged, her voice echoing through the chamber. "It holds the key to my freedom." Determined, I scanned the room for clues. My eyes fell upon a dusty easel in the corner, an unfinished canvas draped over it. I approached, heart racing, and pulled off the cover. It depicted the same garden I had seen in her memories, but there was something else, a shadow lurking in the corner, a figure cloaked in darkness. "That's him," I exclaimed, pointing to the figure. "The artist." "Yes," she replied, urgency in her voice. "You must discover his name and what he did to me." With newfound resolve, I searched the gallery, for any mention of the artist. I rifled through dusty books, faded letters, and long-forgotten records until I stumbled upon a journal hidden beneath a loose floorboard. It belonged to the artist Victor Leclerc. As I read through his entries, I uncovered the truth. His love for her had turned to obsession, and when he realized she would never belong to him, he cursed her in a fit of rage. The final entry revealed a location, a hidden chamber beneath the gallery, where his last brushstroke awaited discovery. I rushed back to the room, the Lady of Shadows watching me intently. "You must hurry," she urged. "Time is running out." With her guidance, I navigated the dark corridors until I found a trapdoor leading to the hidden chamber. It creaked open, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. My heart pounded in my chest as I made my way down, the air growing colder with each step. At the bottom, I found a small, dimly lit room. In the center stood an ornate pedestal, upon which lay a single brush, its bristles stained with vibrant colors. I reached for it, and a surge of energy coursed through me. I could feel Victor's rage, his jealousy, and his sorrow, emotions so strong they nearly overwhelmed me. "Use it to finish the painting," the lady's voice echoed in my mind. "Only then will the curse be broken." I raced back up the stairs, brush in hand. I stood before the unfinished canvas, my heart pounding with purpose. With every stroke, I infused the painting with love and light, depicting the lady free from her chains, surrounded by blossoms and sunshine. As I added the final brushstroke, the room filled with blinding light. The portrait shimmered and transformed, the lady stepping out of the canvas, free at last. "Thank you," she exclaimed, her voice filled with joy. "You've set me free." The shadows that had once haunted the room dissipated, and the air turned warm and inviting. The curse was broken, and the gallery felt alive again, vibrant with art and history. As I stood there, watching her embrace her newfound freedom, I realized that art does not merely exist in frames. It lives, breathes, and tells stories that can transcend time. I had come seeking knowledge, but instead, I had found redemption for both the lady and myself. The Riverside Gallery, once a place of despair, became a sanctuary of hope and renewal. I knew I would return, not just as a historian, but as a guardian of the art that comes to life. I had always loved the quiet charm of our little town, Cedar Hollow, nestled between thick forests and rolling hills. But as autumn descended, a darkness crept in, chilling the air and casting long, haunting shadows. It started with whispers in the wind and rustling leaves, but soon it became something more sinister. I remember that night vividly. I was alone in my room, the soft glow of my bedside lamp illuminating the pages of my book. Outside, the wind howled and the trees swayed ominously. I had just reached a thrilling part when a sudden noise startled me, a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from just outside my window. I froze, heart pounding. Peering through the glass, I saw nothing but darkness. Yet I felt it, a presence. My instinct screamed at me to pull away, but curiosity held me captive. I scanned the yard, and then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement. Something shifted in the shadows, and my breath hitched in my throat. "It's just your imagination," I whispered to myself, trying to shake off the fear. But when I turned back to my book, I couldn't concentrate. The feeling of being watched was suffocating. I finally closed the book, turned off the lamp, and pulled the covers over my head, hoping sleep would come quickly. But sleep didn't come. Instead, I lay there, wide awake, listening to the creaks of my house. Then, I heard it again, the soft scrape of something against the wall. My heart raced as I summoned the courage to peek out from my cocoon of blankets. My room was dark, but the moonlight pouring through the window painted eerie shapes on the walls. Suddenly, I saw it, the glint of eyes reflecting the moonlight, lurking just beyond the edge of my yard. They were deep and hollow, watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Panic surged through me, and I scrambled to grab my phone, desperately dialing my best friend, Emily. "Come on, pick up," I muttered, glancing back at the window. The eyes were still there, unblinking. After what felt like an eternity, Emily answered. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice groggy. "I think someone's outside," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. I saw eyes. "You're just being paranoid," she replied, but I could hear the concern in her tone. "Maybe it's just a deer or something." "No," I insisted. "It's something else. I can feel it." The line went silent for a moment. Okay. Just stay inside and lock your doors. I'll come over." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. As I hung up, I glanced back out the window. The eyes were gone. I felt a strange mix of dread and confusion, but I locked the window and drew the curtains, hoping to shield myself from whatever was lurking outside. Minutes later, I heard a knock on my door. My heart raced as I rushed down the stairs, opening it to find Emily standing there, her face pale. "You okay?" she asked, stepping inside and quickly closing the door behind her. "I saw something out there," I repeated. It felt evil. We settled on a couch, the flickering TV light creating a false sense of safety. We talked about anything and everything to distract us, but the tension lingered in the air. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, followed by the sound of something skittering across the floor. "What was that?" Emily whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. We crept toward the kitchen, the floorboards creaking beneath our feet. As we peered around the corner, our eyes fell on a broken plate scattered across the floor. "It must have fallen," Emily said, though her voice trembled. But I knew better. It felt like a warning. Just then, the lights flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, turning on a flashlight. The beam cut through the blackness, illuminating the kitchen, but I felt a cold breath against my neck, sending chills down my spine. "Did you feel that?" I gasped, turning to face Emily, but she was gone. Panic surged through me as I called her name, but no answer came. The silence was deafening. Then I heard it, the soft whisper of footsteps creeping through the house. I backed away slowly, my heart racing, tried to find my way back to the living room. But as I turned the corner, I froze. There, standing in the shadows, was a figure cloaked in darkness, its eyes glowing like embers. "Who are you?" I choked out, my voice trembling. "The lurker," it hissed, its voice a chilling blend of laughter and malice. "I watch, I wait, and now it's your turn." The air grew thick with dread, and I felt my legs weaken. I turned to run, but stumbled, falling to the floor. The lurker advanced, and I scrambled backward, desperate to escape. Just then, the lights flickered back on, and I spotted Emily standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with horror. "Run!" I screamed, and we bolted for the front door, but it slammed shut before we could reach it. The lurker loomed closer, its shadow stretching like tendrils around us. "You cannot escape," it crooned, a wicked smile spreading across its face. You will be mine. With adrenaline flooding my veins, I remembered the back door. This way, I shouted, dragging Emily toward the kitchen. We burst through the door, sprinting into the night, our breath clouding in the cold air. We ran into the woods, branches clawing at us as we navigated through the darkness. Behind us, the lurker's laughter echoed, a haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine. We have to keep going, I urged, pushing through the underbrush. We stumbled upon a clearing, and I spotted an old shack in the distance. In there, we dashed inside, slamming the door shut and locking it behind us. The shack creaked ominously as we caught our breath, the darkness pressing in on us. I fumbled for my phone, illuminating the room with its weak light. What was that thing? Emily gasped, her voice shaking. I don't know, I replied, trying to steady my breathing. But we need to find a way to stop it. As we scanned the shack, I noticed strange markings on the walls. Runes and symbols I'd seen in old legends about the lurker. These are wards, I said, excitement mingling with fear. They protect against it. We gathered old tools and materials scattered around the shack, working quickly to draw the symbols on the floor. My hands trembled as I traced the lines, feeling the weight of the lurker's presence pressing against the walls. Just as we completed the last symbol, the door rattled violently. The lurker's laughter echoed outside, sending chills through me. You think you can trap me? It taunted. I am eternal. But we stood our ground, the symbols glowing with a faint light. The door burst open, and the lurker lunged at us, but the moment it crossed the threshold, the wards flared to life, illuminating the room in blinding light. No, it screeched, its form twisting and contorting as it was pushed back. You cannot bind me. With a final surge of energy, we pressed forward, chanting the words we had discovered in the shack, and the lurker shrieked in rage. The light grew brighter, enveloping it entirely. In a blinding flash, it vanished, leaving behind only the echoes of its furious cries. We collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, the weight of terror lifting from our shoulders. Is it over? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I think so, I replied, staring at the glowing symbols on the floor. The shack felt different now, lighter, almost peaceful. As dawn broke outside, we stepped out into the light, the shadows retreating with the night. Cedar Hollow was quiet again, but I knew the lurker would always be a part of our story, a reminder of the darkness that lurks when you least expect it. And while we had survived, I couldn't shake the feeling that there would always be eyes watching from the shadows, waiting for the next moment to strike. It was a typical Friday night, the kind that wrapped me in a comforting blanket of solitude. I nestled into my favorite chair, the flickering light of the TV casting shadows around the room. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, its sound harmonizing with the quiet hum of the night. I had just settled in with a bowl of popcorn when it happened. A sharp, piercing ring sliced through the silence. My heart raced as I glanced at the clock. 12:01 a.m. A call at this hour felt wrong, unsettling. I fumbled for my phone, the screen illuminating my face with an eerie glow. The caller ID read, unknown. A chill ran down my spine. Who could be calling me at midnight? I muttered, hesitating, curiosity mixed with dread, urging me to answer. I pressed the green button, bringing the phone to my ear. Hello, I said, trying to sound casual, though my voice trembled. There was a long pause, the silence stretching like a taut string ready to snap. Just as I was about to hang up, I heard a soft, raspy whisper on the other end. "Help me." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" I demanded, my heart pounding in my chest. "Where are you? Please." "I'm trapped." The voice pleaded, a hint of desperation cutting through the static. "You have to listen. The darkness is coming for me." I glanced around my dimly lit room, shadows dancing across the walls. "What do you mean? Who are you?" I pressed, my mind racing. "You have to find the key. The key to stop it," the voice continued, panic rising. "It's in the old house at the end of Willow Street. You must hurry." Then the line went dead, leaving me in a suffocating silence. I stood there, my heart thundering in my ears. The old house at the end of Willow Street? I had heard stories about it, whispers of a dark history and the shadows that haunted its halls. A chill washed over me, but I felt an inexplicable pull, an urgency to uncover the truth. I grabbed my jacket, the cool fabric grounding me as I stepped outside. The night air was crisp, an unsettling stillness enveloping the neighborhood. I climbed into my car, the engine purring to life, and drove towards Willow Street. Each turn felt like a descent into darkness, the street lights flickering ominously as if warning me to turn back. When I arrived, the old house loomed before me, its windows dark and lifeless, like vacant eyes watching my every move. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The air felt thick with tension as I approached the front door, its paint peeling and wood creaking under my touch. "This is insane," I muttered, but I pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. The interior was shrouded in darkness, dust motes dancing in the faint beam of my flashlight. I stepped inside, the floorboards creaking beneath my weight, each sound amplifying the eerie silence. "Where are you?" I called, my voice echoing through the empty halls. The only response was the soft rustle of leaves outside, a haunting reminder of my isolation. I moved deeper into the house, scanning the walls for any sign of a key or something significant. My flashlight flickered, casting unsettling shadows that seemed to play tricks on my mind. I felt a creeping sensation, as if unseen eyes were watching me from the corners of the room. Suddenly, I noticed a door at the end of the hall, slightly ajar. My heart raced as I approached, the air growing colder with each step. I pushed the door open to reveal a small, dimly lit room filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. In the center, a dusty table sat, and on it lay an intricately designed box. "This has to be it," I whispered, stepping forward. I reached for the box, my fingers brushing against its cool surface. As I lifted the lid, a gust of wind slammed the door shut behind me. I jumped, my heart racing as I turned to face the now-locked door. Inside the box lay a simple key, glinting in the dim light. But as I picked it up, a low growl reverberated through the room, sending shivers down my spine. The shadows in the corners seemed to move, swirling together as if forming a dark figure. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice hissed, echoing from the shadows. "You've awakened what was meant to stay buried. What do you want?" I shouted, clutching the key tightly, my voice shaking. "You'll pay for your curiosity," the voice growled, drawing closer. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in, suffocating. In a sudden rush of adrenaline, I darted for the door, yanking on the handle desperately. It wouldn't budge. I turned back, the figure materializing from the shadows, its hollow eyes locking onto mine. "Help me!" It mimicked in a twisted version of the voice from the phone, and I felt my resolve waver. But I couldn't let it win. I had to escape. With one last surge of strength, I slammed the key into the lock and twisted it with all my might. The door burst open, and I stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for breath. I didn't look back. I ran. I dashed through the house, racing toward the front door. I could hear the figure behind me, its laughter echoing off the walls, growing louder as I neared the exit. I burst through the door, sprinting into the night, the cool air hitting my face like a slap. I didn't stop running until I was safely in my car, the engine roaring to life as I sped away from that cursed place. My heart raced, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. As I drove, I glanced at the key in my hand, realizing it was more than just a key. It was a burden, a reminder of the darkness I had encountered. I swore then that I would never answer an unknown call again. But deep down, I knew the truth. The shadows don't just linger in old houses. They follow, waiting for the next curious soul to answer their midnight call. The summer of my senior year was supposed to be filled with carefree days and adventure, but instead, it became a summer of nightmares. When I heard about Whispering Pines Amusement Park, long abandoned and rumored to be haunted, I felt an irresistible pull. My friends and I decided it was the perfect place for our last summer escapade. Little did we know that we were stepping into a tale that would haunt us forever. It was a warm Friday night when we made our way to the park, flashlights in hand and laughter echoing in the stillness. The rusted gates creaked ominously as we pushed them open, revealing a world frozen in time. The once vibrant colors of the rides were now dulled by years of neglect, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. A chill ran down my spine, but excitement coursed through my veins. This is going to be epic. Jake, the bravest of our group, shouted, leading the way toward the entrance. The old ticket booth stood like a ghost, its windows shattered and the sign hanging crookedly. I followed closely behind, my heart pounding like a drum. As we ventured deeper, the sounds of our laughter faded, replaced by an eerie silence that enveloped us. The Ferris wheel loomed overhead, its skeletal frame silhouetted against the moonlit sky. I felt a shiver of unease as I stared at it. Something about the way it swayed in the night air felt wrong. "Let's check out the funhouse," Emily suggested, her voice trembling with excitement. The funhouse was a twisted maze of mirrors and distorted images, its entrance beckoning like a dark mouth ready to swallow us whole. "You're on," I replied, trying to mask my own apprehension. We stepped inside, flashlights illuminating warped reflections of ourselves. Laughter bubbled up, but it quickly faded as the atmosphere shifted. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from within the maze. We froze, exchanging nervous glances. "What was that?" I whispered, my heart racing. "Just the wind," Jake said, though his voice wavered. But a gnawing feeling in my gut told me it was more than that. We pressed deeper into the funhouse, the mirrors warping our images into grotesque shapes. As we turned a corner, I caught sight of something, a shadow darting between the reflections. My breath caught in my throat. "Did you see that?" I gasped, feeling a cold sweat break out on my forehead. "See what?" Emily asked, her eyes wide. "I swear I saw someone or something." I insisted, my voice shaking. But before I could elaborate, the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness. "Guys," I called out, panic creeping in. Just as I turned to find my friends, the lights blinked back on, revealing a figure standing behind me. A tall, dark silhouette with hollow eyes staring directly at me. "Run!" I screamed, and we bolted, the laughter of our earlier bravado replaced by sheer terror. We stumbled out of the funhouse, gasping for breath. "What was that?" Jake panted, his face pale. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here," I replied, glancing back at the funhouse. The figure had vanished, but the feeling of being watched lingered, heavy and suffocating. We raced toward the exit, but the park felt like a labyrinth, twisting and turning in ways I couldn't comprehend. As we dashed past the carousel, its chipped horses seemed to come alive under the moonlight, their eyes glinting with an unnatural light. Then we heard it, a low, haunting laugh that echoed through the park, chilling us to our core. It was a sound that sent a wave of dread crashing over us. "This isn't funny anymore," Emily shouted, her voice cracking with fear. "We need to split up," Jake suggested, panic driving his decision. "We'll find a way out faster." "Are you insane?" I replied, feeling a surge of anger. "We need to stick together." But before I could protest further, he sprinted off into the shadows, leaving us no choice but to follow. "Jake!" I shouted, but the darkness swallowed his voice. "We'll meet back at the entrance," Emily yelled, her voice fading as she dashed in the opposite direction. I stood there, torn between fear and the need to find my friends. Alone, I wandered through the park, the laughter still echoing in my ears. I turned a corner and stumbled upon the old haunted house, its door ajar, calling to me. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside, hoping to find Jake or Emily. The air inside was stale, thick with dust and memories. I scanned the room, my flashlight beam dancing across the walls, revealing faded posters of long-gone attractions. Then, I heard it, the soft sound of footsteps behind me. I spun around, heart racing, but saw nothing. "This isn't funny," I called out, my voice trembling. "Show yourself." Suddenly, the door slammed shut, plunging me into darkness. I stumbled backward, panic surging through me as I fumbled for my phone. The flashlight illuminated the room, but the shadows danced menacingly, twisting into shapes that seemed to reach for me. "Help!" I screamed, but my voice felt swallowed by the oppressive silence. Just then, I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye, a figure emerging from the shadows, its face obscured, but the grin was unmistakable. "Welcome to my playground," it whispered, a voice soaked in malice. My heart dropped as I realized this was no mere ghost. It was something far more sinister. "Let me out," I begged, scrambling to the door. But it wouldn't budge. It felt like it was sealed by a force beyond my understanding. "You can't leave," the figure taunted, its eyes glowing with a wicked light. "You enter my realm, and now you must play the game." "What game?" I stammered, my mind racing. "The game of fear," it replied, stepping closer. "Face your darkest nightmares, or become one of them." In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. I knew I had to escape, but the walls of the haunted house seemed to close in. I took a deep breath and summoned every ounce of courage I had left. "I won't be a pawn in your game," I shouted, feeling the power of defiance surge within me. With a final, desperate push, I charged at the door, throwing my weight against it. To my surprise, it swung open, and I stumbled out into the night, gasping for air. The laughter echoed behind me, but I didn't look back. I ran, fueled by adrenaline, racing toward the entrance. Finally, I burst through the gates of whispering pines, my friends nowhere in sight. The park loomed behind me, a shadowy figure in the moonlight. I could still hear the haunting laughter echoing in my ears, a chilling reminder of the night's terror. "Jake! Emily!" I called out, desperation clawing in my throat. But all that answered was the whisper of the wind through the trees. The summer was never the same after that night. The park stood abandoned, a cursed playground of nightmares and lost souls. I tried to forget, but the laughter followed me, a haunting melody that would forever remind me of the darkness that lurked within the devil's playground. It all began with a rumor, a whispered secret that slithered through the halls of my high school like a restless ghost. They said there was an empty room tucked away in a basement, a room that had been sealed for years, a room that held secrets best left undisturbed. I had always been the curious type, and as the whispers grew louder, my intrigue became an obsession. One rainy afternoon, while the rest of the school was bustling with the sound of laughter and chatter, I found myself alone in the library with nothing but my thoughts and the persistent urge to uncover the truth. I glanced out the window, watching droplets race down the glass, and a plan began to form in my mind. I would find that room. After school, I made my way toward the basement, my heart pounding with anticipation. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting shadows that danced along the walls. I reached the bottom of the stairs, the air growing cooler and heavier with each step. There was something unsettling about the basement, a feeling that I was being watched, though I was alone. I walked past the storage rooms filled with forgotten supplies and old desks, searching for the door that had become the subject of so many rumors. Finally, I found it, a heavy wooden door at the end of the hall, its surface scarred and worn. A faded sign hung crookedly above it, reading "Authorized personnel only." My heart raced as I approached, the door looming before me like a portal to another world. I reached for the handle, hesitating for just a moment. What lay behind that door? Secrets? Shadows? Or something far worse? With a deep breath, I turned the handle and pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, echoing through the empty hall. Inside, darkness enveloped me, swallowing the light from the hallway. I stepped in cautiously, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The room was small and sparsely furnished. Dust motes floated in the air, illuminated by the dim light. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the floor was littered with debris. In the center of the room stood an old table, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. But it was what lay against the far wall that caught my eye. A large, ominous mirror draped in a tattered cloth. Compelled by an inexplicable force, I approached the mirror. As I drew closer, I could feel a chill in the air, and a sense of dread washed over me. I hesitated, my hand hovering above the cloth, unsure if I should unveil whatever lay beneath it. But curiosity won out. I tugged at the fabric, pulling it away to reveal the mirror's surface. At first, it seemed ordinary, just a reflection of the empty room behind me. But then, the air around me grew thick, and my reflection began to shimmer. I leaned in closer, my heart pounding. Suddenly, the surface of the mirror rippled like water, and to my horror, my reflection twisted into a grotesque version of myself. My eyes sunken, my mouth stretched into a sinister grin. I stumbled back, gasping in shock. Was it a trick of the light? A figment of my imagination? "What do you want?" I whispered, feeling a cold sweat bead on my forehead. The mirror seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, and I could swear I heard faint whispers echoing from its depths. "Come closer," the whispers beckoned, hauntingly melodic yet laced with menace. I felt a pull, An irresistible urge to step forward again, but I fought against it, shaking my head. "No," I shouted, panic rising within me. "I won't." But the whispers grew louder, more insistent, drowning out my thoughts. My heart raced as I felt the room closing in around me, the walls bending and shifting. I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, trapping me inside. "Let me out," I screamed, pounding on the door, desperation clawing at my throat. The whispers morphed into laughter, echoing mockingly in the enclosed space. I was trapped, and the mirror pulsed with energy, its surface swirling like a storm. In a moment of clarity, I remembered the stories, the tales of those who had gazed into the mirror and never returned. They had become lost, trapped in a realm of shadows. My chest tightened with fear as I realized I was about to become another victim. I faced the mirror again, summoning what little courage I had left. "You won't take me," I shouted, my voice trembling. I grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at the mirror. It shattered with a deafening crash, shards flying everywhere, the laughter abruptly silenced. For a moment, everything went still. The room dimmed, and I felt the pressure around me lift. I rushed to the door, throwing my weight against it. To my relief, it swung open, and I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air. I didn't look back as I raced up the stairs and out of the basement, the echoes of the whispers fading behind me. I burst into the bright light of the school, my heart still racing as I tried to process what had just happened. The empty room and its cursed mirror haunted my thoughts for days. I knew I had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out, a lingering darkness that would always be a part of me. From that day on, I avoided the basement and the rumors surrounding the empty room. But late at night, when the world was quiet, I could still hear the faint whispers calling to me, a reminder of the shadows that lay behind the door, a darkness I had barely escaped. The old house had been in our family for generations, a sprawling Victorian structure that creaked and groaned with age. As a child, I had always been fascinated by its quirks, the flickering lights, the whispering winds, and especially the attic. My grandmother had warned me never to go up there, speaking of shadows that danced and voices that echoed. But curiosity has a way of gnawing at your resolve, and as summer approached, I found myself drawn to the attic more than ever. One evening, while my parents were out running errands, I decided it was time to confront my fears. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and a heart full of trepidation, I climbed the narrow staircase leading to the attic door. The air grew colder as I ascended, the wooden steps creaking beneath my weight. I reached the door, its paint peeling and the brass knob cold to the touch. Taking a deep breath, I turned the knob and pushed the door open. The attic was a world frozen in time, cluttered with forgotten memories, dusty trunks, old toys, and cobweb-covered furniture. The air was thick with the scent of mothballs and nostalgia. But it was the silence that unnerved me the most. It felt heavy, as if the room were holding its breath. As I ventured further inside, I noticed a large trunk in the corner, its lid slightly ajar. Compelled by a force I couldn't explain, I approached it, my heart racing. I pried the lid open, revealing a collection of faded photographs, yellowed letters, and a small, intricately carved wooden box. My fingers trembled as I picked up the box, and the moment I touched it, I felt a jolt of energy surge through me. I set the box aside and began sifting through the photographs. Each image told a story: my grandparents in their youth, family gatherings, and celebrations long forgotten. But one photograph caught my eye: a black and white image of a woman standing in front of the house, her face obscured by shadows, a haunting smile playing on her lips. Below the photo was a date, 1923. Suddenly, I heard it, a soft whisper like the rustling of leaves. I froze, straining to listen. The whisper grew louder, almost forming words. "Help me," it murmured, sending chills down my spine. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. No answer came, but the whisper continued, wrapping around me like a cold breeze. Driven by curiosity and fear, I turned my attention back to the wooden box. I carefully opened it, revealing delicate jewelry, a locket, a ring, and a small, folded piece of paper. As I unfolded the letter, the whispers intensified, swirling around me like a storm. The letter was dated 1923, just like the photograph. It was written in elegant script, and as I read the words, my blood ran cold. To whoever finds this, I am trapped in this house, bound by secrets that must never be unearthed. My name is Eleanor, and I was wronged. If you hear my voice, please find the truth and set me free. A shiver of realization washed over me. Eleanor was the woman in the photograph. But what had happened to her? Why had my grandmother warned me about the attic? The whispers grew frantic, echoing my thoughts. Find me. Uncover the truth. I felt a compulsion to explore the attic further. I moved toward the far end of the room, where the shadows seemed to thicken. There, I noticed a small door hidden behind a stack of boxes. My heart raced as I pulled the boxes away, revealing the door's rusty handle. It was locked, but the urge to uncover what lay behind it was overwhelming. I searched the trunk, hoping to find a key. My fingers brushed against something cold. A small, ornate key nestled among the letters. I inserted the key into the lock, my hands shaking with anticipation. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow, dark space beyond. I flicked on my flashlight, illuminating a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The whispers surged, becoming a cacophony of voices urging me forward. "Go, go! Find me!" They echoed, and I felt a shiver of determination. I descended the stairs, each step creaking ominously beneath me. The air grew colder, and the whispers transformed into a haunting melody. At the bottom, I found myself in a hidden cellar, dust motes swirling in the dim light. The room was filled with old furniture and cobwebs, but what caught my eye was a large, ornate mirror hanging on the wall. Its surface shimmered like water, and as I approached, I felt a strange pull, a connection to the woman in the photograph. "Eleanor," I whispered, my heart racing. I reached out, touching the cool surface of the mirror. Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed, and the mirror rippled like a disturbed pond. In an instant, the reflection shifted, revealing a darkened scene. A glimpse of Eleanor trapped in a room, her face filled with desperation. "Help me," she cried, her voice breaking through the barrier of time. "You must uncover the truth." "What I need to do?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "The locket, it holds the key. Find the locket," she urged, her image flickering as the mirror began to darken. I rushed back up the stairs, heart pounding. I rifled through the trunk, desperately searching for the locket I had seen earlier. My fingers trembled as I found it, the delicate chain glinting in the light. I held it tightly, feeling its weight and significance. Returning to the mirror, I held the locket in front of me. "Eleanor, I have it. What do I do?" The mirror shimmered, and Eleanor's face appeared once more, full of sorrow. Place it against the mirror. It will release me. With a deep breath, I pressed the locket against the glass. The mirror rippled violently, and a blinding light engulfed the room. I stumbled back, shielding my eyes as the light intensified, filling the cellar. When the light faded, the air felt different, lighter, freer. I opened my eyes to find the mirror now a clear reflection of the cellar, with no sign of Eleanor. But the whispers had transformed into soft, grateful murmurs. "Thank you. You've set me free." They floated around me, a warm embrace that filled the room. I stepped back, my heart finally at peace. The attic no longer felt ominous. Instead, it was a place of release, a chapter of my family's history that had been unveiled. I had uncovered a secret that had lingered for decades, and in doing so, I had freed a lost soul. As I climbed back up to the attic, I felt a sense of closure. I would share Eleanor's story with my family, ensuring her memory lived on. The voices had led me to the truth, and though the attic would always be a place of intrigue, it was now a sanctuary of secrets unveiled. The moment I laid eyes on the abandoned asylum, I felt an unsettling chill creep down my spine. Nestled at the edge of town, it loomed like a dark sentinel, its crumbling walls and shattered windows whispering tales of despair. The stories I had heard in hushed tones around campfires had always intrigued me. The lost souls, the mysterious disappearances, and the haunting cries that echoed through the halls. I knew I had to explore it. One dreary afternoon, armed with a flashlight and my camera, I approached the asylum. The air was thick with fog, and the sky overhead churned with dark clouds, as if nature itself was warning me to turn back. But curiosity burned brighter than fear, and I stepped through the rusted gate, my heart pounding in anticipation. As I crossed the threshold, the heavy wooden doors creaked open, revealing a dimly lit foyer. The air smelled of mildew and decay, and each step I took echoed ominously in the empty space. I flicked on my flashlight, illuminating the peeling wallpaper and the remnants of what once was a forgotten world of tattered furniture and abandoned belongings. I ventured deeper into the asylum, the beam of my flashlight dancing across the walls, revealing faded photographs of patients who had once roamed these halls. Their eyes seemed to follow me, filled with a mix of sadness and longing. I felt an inexplicable pull toward the second floor, where the whispers of the past seemed to beckon me. Climbing the stairs, I noticed a strange chill in the air that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The second floor was a labyrinth of empty rooms, each one holding its own secrets. I pushed open the first door, revealing a small examination room filled with rusting medical equipment, tools that had once held the power to heal, but now lay abandoned, forgotten. Suddenly, a sound pierced the silence, a soft whimpering echoing from down the hall. My heart raced as I turned my flashlight toward the sound, the beam trembling in my hand. "Hello," I called out, my voice wavering. "Is anyone there?" Silence answered me, but the whimpering continued, drawing me deeper into the shadows. I followed the sound, each step heavy with uncertainty. As I reached the end of the hall, I found an old door slightly ajar. The whimpering grew louder, more desperate. I pushed the door open, and the sight before me made my breath hitch. The room was filled with dust-covered dolls, their glassy eyes staring blankly into space. In the center of the room sat a girl, no older than 10, her hair matted and her dress tattered. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "They won't let me leave." My heart raced as I knelt beside her. "Who won't let you leave?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The shadows," she said, her gaze darting to the corners of the room. "They watch me, and they don't want me to go." A chill swept through me, and I glanced around, feeling an oppressive presence in the room. "You're not alone," I assured her. "I'm here. We can find a way out together." Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and I felt a rush of air, as if something unseen had swept through the room. The girl's eyes widened in terror. "They're coming," she cried, scrambling away from me. "You need to leave." Before I could react, the lights flickered and the shadows in the corners seemed to stretch and writhe. Panic surged within me, and I bolted to my feet. "Wait, we can help each other," I shouted, but she was already retreating into the darkness. I turned to leave, but as I stepped back into the hallway, the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. My heart raced as I pounded on the door, desperation clawing at my throat. "Let me out, please." The whispers grew louder, echoing in my mind. "You shouldn't have come here. You shouldn't have come here." I felt a pull, an invisible force dragging me deeper into the asylum. I stumbled down the hall, the shadows closing in around me. I could hear the girl's voice faintly calling, "Help me, don't leave me." "Where are you?" I shouted, my voice breaking. "I'm coming." The air thickened, and I felt the weight of countless eyes watching me from the darkness. As I turned a corner, I saw flickering lights ahead, an old common room filled with broken chairs and shattered glass. In the center stood a figure, cloaked in shadows, its face obscured. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The figure stepped forward, revealing a twisted smile that sent chills down my spine. "I'm the keeper of their secrets," it hissed. "And you, dear intruder, are now a part of them." I stumbled back, my heart racing as I turned to flee, but the shadows closed in around me, blocking my path. The whispers morphed into screams, echoing through the halls, a cacophony of lost souls pleading for release. In the chaos, I caught a glimpse of the girl, her eyes wide with terror, trapped in the shadows. "Help me," she cried again, reaching out toward me. "Hold on," I shouted, determination igniting within me. I pushed my way through the darkness, feeling the cold fingers of the shadows brushing against my skin, clawing at my resolve. I reached for her hand, our fingers almost touching when the keeper lunged at me, its form shifting and swirling like smoke. "You cannot save her," it howled, the words reverberating through my bones. "I won't leave her," I screamed, summoning every ounce of courage I had. With a surge of adrenaline, I leaped forward, breaking through the barrier of shadows and grasping the girl's hand. In that instant, the world exploded into light, the darkness retreating like a tide. The keeper's scream echoed in my ears, but I held on tightly, pulling the girl with me. Together, we burst through the door, stumbling into the hallway. We didn't stop running. I could feel the shadows clawing at our heels, desperate to reclaim us. We raced down the stairs, ignoring the fear that threatened to engulf us. As we reached the front door, I threw it open and we tumbled outside, gasping for fresh air. The asylum stood silent behind us, the whispers fading into the night. I turned to the girl, who looked up at me with wide, grateful eyes. "You saved me," she whispered, and for the first time, a smile broke through her fear. "Let's get you home," I said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Together, We walked away from the haunted asylum, the weight of its secrets lifted, leaving behind the shadows of the forgotten. The night the blood moon rose, I felt the air crackle with anticipation. It was a night when the veil between worlds thinned, where shadows danced with a life of their own, and the line between justice and vengeance blurred. I stood on the edge of the forest, the crimson glow of the moon casting an eerie light over the land, illuminating the path that would lead me to my reckoning. 6 months ago, my brother, Ethan, had been taken from me, his laughter silenced by a brutal act of violence that left our small town reeling. They called it an accident, a random act of cruelty, but I knew better. I knew who was responsible. The name Marcus Reed burned in my mind like an unquenchable fire. Marcus was a local thug, a man who had always skated by on the fringes of the law, using fear and intimidation to get what he wanted. When Ethan had stood up to him, believing in the goodness of people and the possibility of change, Marcus had responded with lethal force. I had watched as my brother's light was extinguished, and I had sworn an oath of vengeance under that very moon. Tonight was the night I would make him pay. As I made my way through the forest, the shadows seemed to whisper my name, urging me onward. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a drumbeat of rage and sorrow. I had spent every waking moment plotting this, training my body and mind for this confrontation. I had become a ghost in my own life, unnoticed, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The old warehouse on the outskirts of town loomed ahead, its weathered structure a testament to the secrets it held. It was here that Marcus had gathered his crew, the men who had become his weapons. I crept closer, my breath steadying as I prepared for what lay ahead. The blood moon hung high, a witness to my intentions. I slipped through a broken window, the glass crunching beneath my boots. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the scent of stale beer. Laughter echoed from the back room, a sound that twisted my insides. I knew they were celebrating, oblivious to the storm that was about to descend upon them. I moved silently through the shadows, my heartbeat synchronizing with the rhythm of their revelry. As I reached the doorway to the main room, I paused, taking a moment to gather my thoughts. I was no longer the timid sister who had watched in horror as her brother was taken. I was the embodiment of vengeance. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The laughter died instantly, replaced by stunned silence. A group of men turned to face me, their expressions shifting from surprise to recognition. "What the hell are you doing here?" Marcus growled, his voice low and menacing. "Looking for you," I replied, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "It's time to settle the score." The room erupted into chaos as Marcus lunged at me, but I was ready. I sidestepped, using the momentum of his attack against him. He crashed into a table, sending bottles and glasses flying. The other men scrambled to their feet, but I had anticipated their movements. I had trained for this. With a surge of adrenaline, I fought my way through them, each punch fueled by the memory of my brother's laughter, each kick a reminder of the life stolen from us. Marcus, recovering from his fall, snarled as he pulled a knife from his belt. The blade gleamed ominously in the dim light, a reflection of the rage that simmered between us. "Do you really think you can take me on?" he spat, brandishing the knife. "You're just a girl playing at vengeance. Watch me." I snapped, my voice cutting through the tension as I charged at him. We clashed, the knife slicing through the air as I dodged, my movements instinctual. I felt the adrenaline surge, the world around me narrowing to just him and me. I could hear the echoes of laughter from the past, the way Ethan had always stood up for the underdog, the way he had fought for what was right. I channeled that spirit into my every move. We danced through the chaos, my fist striking with precision. I blocked his slashes, countering with jabs that sent him staggering back. The other men hesitated, unsure of whether to intervene. They were cowards, just as Marcus had always been, a bully hiding behind a facade of strength. In a moment of desperation, he lunged again, but this time I was ready. I sidestepped, grabbing his wrist and twisting it, forcing him to drop the knife. It clattered to the ground, and I seized the opportunity, pushing him against the wall. "Do you remember my brother?" I hissed, my breath hot with rage. "Do you remember the life you stole from him?" He sneered, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. He was weak. "You're weak too." "Maybe," I said, my heart racing. "But tonight, I'm stronger than you." With all my strength, I delivered a final blow, sending him crashing to the floor. He groaned, staring up at me in disbelief. I stood over him, breathing heavily, the weight of my vengeance heavy on my shoulders. "Let this be a lesson," I said, my voice low but fierce. "You will never hurt anyone again." As I turned to leave, the other men scrambled to help their fallen leader, but I had no intention of sticking around to witness their cowardice. I stepped back into the night, the blood moon still shining down on me, a silent witness to my act of vengeance. As I walked away, I felt a sense of closure begin to settle within me. I had avenged my brother, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my strength. The blood moon had risen, but it had also set a new path before me, one where I would no longer be a victim of fear, but a warrior of my own making. I had always thought of myself as a rational person, someone who didn't believe in the supernatural. But that was before I moved into the old Victorian house on Maple Street. When I first stepped inside, the air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I shrugged it off, attributing it to the house's age. Little did I know, it was just the beginning of my nightmare. It started with the whispers. At first, they were faint, like the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. I dismissed them as the creaks and groans of an old house settling. But as the days turned into weeks, the whispers grew louder, more distinct, and impossible to ignore. I would lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, straining to catch the words that seemed to seep from the very walls. "Help us!" The voice was a soft murmur, barely audible, but filled with desperation. I would sit up, heart racing, convinced I had imagined it. Yet, every night, the whispers returned, weaving tales of sorrow and despair. They called to me, pulling me closer to the secrets hidden within the walls. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. Armed with a flashlight, I ventured into the dimly lit basement, the air thick with dust and neglect. The whispers intensified, echoing off the concrete walls, wrapping around me like a cold shroud. "Help us, find us." I shone the beam of light around, revealing cobwebs and forgotten remnants of a past life. My heart pounded as I approached a section of the wall that appeared different from the rest. There was a faint outline, almost like a door, but sealed shut. I pressed my ear against the cold surface, and the whispers surged, now urgent and frantic. Please help us before it's too late. I stumbled back, my mind racing. Who were these voices? What happened here? Determined to uncover the truth, I searched the house for clues. Old newspapers, dusty books, and forgotten photographs littered the shelves. Each artifact told a story, but none revealed the mystery of the whispers. Days turned into sleepless nights, haunted by the voices that seemed to grow more desperate with every passing hour. I began to see shadows flickering in my periphery, shapes that danced just beyond the reach of my flashlight. Was I losing my mind? One stormy night, as thunder rumbled ominously outside, I found myself drawn to the basement once more. The air was electric with tension, the whispers crescendoing into a cacophony of pleas. Help us. You must find us. With trembling hands, I pushed against the wall, my heart racing. The wood creaked ominously, and to my shock, a section began to shift. I held my breath as a hidden door slowly creaked open, revealing a dark passageway that seemed to lead into the depths of the house. Go find us. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of dampness and decay. I switched on my flashlight, illuminating the narrow corridor. The whispers guided me, urging me deeper into the darkness. The walls felt alive, pulsating with energy as if they were breathing. I reached the end of the passageway, where I found a small, dimly lit room. The sight before me sent chills down my spine. The walls were covered in drawings, frantic scribbles of faces, hands reaching out, and words that screamed of fear and despair. In the center of the room lay a dusty, broken mirror, shards scattered like the remnants of lost souls. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, now echoing in my mind. Free us! Panic surged through me as I realized the truth. This was not just a house. It was a tomb. These were the voices of those who had suffered here, trapped in a cycle of torment. They were begging for release, for someone to uncover their fate. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, when a sudden chill swept through the room. I felt an icy hand grasp my shoulder. I whirled around, but no one was there. The whispers grew louder, a deafening chorus demanding my attention. I could feel their pain, their suffering. They were lost souls trapped behind the walls, and I was the only one who could help them. In a frantic rush, I gathered the shattered pieces of the mirror, piecing them together as the whispers guided me. I formed a makeshift altar, aligning the shards to create a reflection of their tormented faces. As I finished, a blinding light erupted from the mirror, illuminating the room and casting long shadows against the walls. The whispers turned into screams, a cacophony of anguish. I closed my eyes, bracing for the worst, but instead, I felt a warmth envelop me, a release of the tension that had gripped the house for so long. The voices calmed, transforming from cries of despair to whispers of gratitude. I opened my eyes to find the room empty, the shadows retreating into the corners. The air felt lighter, the oppressive weight lifted. I stepped back into the corridor, and for the first time, the walls were silent. As I ascended the stairs, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The whispers had ceased, but I knew they would always be a part of me, a reminder of the lives once trapped within those walls. I had freed them, but I would forever carry their stories, their pain, and their whispers. It was an ordinary day when I first noticed it. The strange noise echoing beneath the floorboards of my new home. I had just moved into the old farmhouse at the edge of town, eager to escape the hustle of city life. The rustic charm of the creaking wood and the sprawling fields outside felt like a dream come true. But as I settled in, the house began to reveal its dark secrets. At first, the sound was subtle, a faint scratching, almost like an animal scurrying beneath the floor. I shrugged it off as a mouse, or perhaps an old pipe settling. But as the nights grew colder, the noises became more pronounced, transforming into a rhythmic thumping that reverberated through my bones. Just the house settling, I told myself, though my heart raced each time the sound pierced the silence of the night. I found it harder to sleep, and I often lay awake, listening intently. The shadows danced across the walls, and I could swear they moved with a life of their own. One particularly stormy night, the wind howled outside, rattling the windows like a ghostly choir. That's when I heard it, a desperate whisper rising from the floorboards, a voice laced with fear and anguish. "Help me! Help!" I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice was soft yet filled with a haunting desperation that sent chills down my spine. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. There was no reply, only the sound of my own breathing, heavy and ragged. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I grabbed a flashlight and crept towards the nearest room, a small study with faded wallpaper and an ancient oak desk. I knelt down, pressing my ear against the cold wooden floor. The whispering returned, stronger now, almost pleading. "Help me, please." I felt a mix of dread and determination wash over me. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to discover what lay beneath the surface. With frantic energy, I began to pry up the floorboards. Each creak felt like a warning, but I pushed on, driven by an overwhelming need to understand. As the last board came loose, a foul odor wafted up, and the darkness beneath seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I shone my flashlight into the gaping hole, the light barely penetrating the thick darkness. Suddenly, the whispers turned into a cacophony of cries, echoing in my mind. "Free us! Free us!" My heart raced as I leaned closer, the beam of light revealing a small, damp space beneath the house. And then I saw it, a shadow shifting in the depths, a form that twisted and writhed as if it were alive. I stumbled back, my breath hitching in my throat. "Help us!" it cried again, the voice now filled with rage. "You must help us." I hesitated, the weight of its gaze pinning me in place. The shadows seemed to stretch out, reaching for me as if trying to pull me into their abyss. Panic surged through me, but I couldn't turn away. What had happened here? Who were these voices? Gathering my courage, I reached into the darkness, feeling a cold, clammy hand grasp my wrist. I yanked it back, but the grip was strong, pulling me closer. "You must listen," the voice growled, now filled with pain and anger. "We are trapped. We were wrong." I gasped, my mind racing. The shadow beneath the floorboards was not just an echo of the past. It was a manifestation of suffering, a remnant of those who had once lived in this house. I felt a wave of sympathy wash over me. They needed my help, but how could I free them? "Tell me what to do." I shouted into the darkness, desperation lacing my voice. "How can I help you?" The shadow twitched, its form flickering like a dying flame. "You must uncover the truth," it hissed. "Find the hidden room. Beneath this house, it holds the key." Without thinking, I scrambled to my feet and began to search the room, my heart racing as I ripped through old boxes and dusty furniture. My hands trembled, and the whispers grew louder, urging me on. I could feel the shadow's presence, a looming weight that both terrified and compelled me. Finally, behind a rotting bookcase, I noticed a slightly ajar panel, a hidden door. I pushed it open with all my strength, revealing a narrow staircase leading into darkness. The air was thick, and the whispers became a frantic chorus. Go, go! I took a deep breath and descended the stairs, the beam of my flashlight illuminating the damp stone walls. The whispers grew clearer, and I could finally make out words. Help us. We were betrayed, trapped for eternity. At the bottom of the stairs, I found a small chamber filled with remnants of the past. Old toys, torn photographs, and rusted chains. In the center lay a weathered trunk, its lock covered in dust and cobwebs. The moment I approached it, the shadows surged forward, wrapping around me in a cold embrace. Open it, the voices screamed. Free us! With trembling hands, I pried open the trunk, and a rush of cold air swept over me. Inside, I found journals filled with the stories of those who had suffered in this house. Children who had been wronged, families torn apart, and lives lost to cruelty. As I read, the whispers intensified, crescendoing into a deafening roar. Suddenly, the room erupted in chaos. The shadows swirled around me, a tempest of anguish and rage. I could feel their pain, their desperation, and it consumed me. I will help you, I cried out, tears streaming down my face. I will make it right. As if hearing my vow, the shadows began to calm, their anger dissipating. I felt a warmth envelop me, a sense of release. The whispers transformed into soft sighs of relief, and the shadows slowly receded, retreating into the corners of the room. With the journals in hand, I emerged from the depths of the house, my heart pounding but filled with purpose. I would tell their stories, ensure they were remembered, and finally bring peace to the souls trapped beneath the floorboards. From that day forward, the whispers faded, but I would never forget the shadows I had encountered. They were gone, but their legacy lived on in the memories I would share, ensuring that their pain was not in vain. It happened on the night of the harvest moon, the kind of night that turns the world into a silver-tinted dream. I had always been drawn to the woods behind my grandmother's old house, especially at night when the trees seemed to whisper secrets in the moonlight. But that night, something felt different. Something dark and sinister lurked just beyond the tree line. As I stood at the edge of the forest, my heart raced with both excitement and dread. The locals had warned me about the midnight forest, claiming it was cursed, haunted by the spirits of those who had wandered too deep and never returned. I brushed off their superstitions, convinced they were just tales spun to frighten children. But as I took my first step into the woods, I felt the air grow thick, almost suffocating. With each crunch of leaves beneath my feet, the world outside faded away, swallowed by the shadows. The trees towered overhead, their twisted branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. An unsettling silence enveloped me, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the rustling of leaves. I couldn't help but feel as if I was being watched. As I ventured deeper, the moonlight flickered through the branches, creating eerie patterns on the forest floor. I had come seeking adventure, but now I felt a gnawing sense of unease. The whispers began again, soft, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to swirl around me. I paused, straining to catch a coherent word. Leave before it's too late. A chill crept up my spine, and I shook my head, trying to dismiss the warning. But deep down, I knew I should turn back. Still, curiosity pushed me forward, deeper into the heart of the forest. I had to know what lay hidden in the shadows. After what felt like hours of wandering, I stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood a gnarled tree, its bark twisted and blackened. At its base, I noticed something glimmering in the moonlight, a necklace ornate and shimmering, as if it had been waiting for me. I knelt down to pick it up, its cool surface sending shivers through my fingers. As I clasped it in my hand, the air around me shifted. The whispers grew louder, now frantic and desperate. You shouldn't have come here. You must leave. Panic surged within me, and I turned to flee, but the shadows seemed to close in, swirling around the clearing. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, an apparition shrouded in mist, eyes hollow and vacant. It was a woman, her face twisted in anguish. "You've taken what doesn't belong to you," she cried, her voice echoing through the trees. "Now, you will face the curse of the midnight forest." I stumbled back, terror gripping my heart. The forest came alive, branches snapping and roots twisting as if trying to ensnare me. I could feel the weight of the spirits pressing down, their sorrow palpable, their cries echoing in my mind. "Help us! Free us!" I clutched the necklace tightly, realizing it was the source of their torment. Legend spoke of a lost soul who had once worn it, trapped in the forest for eternity. I had unwittingly awakened something ancient and malevolent, and now I was ensnared in its web. Fear propelled me to run, but the forest seemed to shift and writhe, leading me further away from the way out. I could hear the ghostly whispers, now a chorus of anguish. "Return it! Return it!" With each step, the shadows danced closer, clawing at my ankles, the air thick with their despair. I had to find my way back to the tree, to return the necklace, and free the souls trapped within this cursed place. As I raced through the underbrush, branches snagged at my clothes, tearing at my skin. The whispers became a thunderous roar, drowning out my thoughts. "You cannot escape. You belong to us now." Finally, I burst back into the clearing, breathless and trembling. The gnarled tree loomed before me, its twisted branches reaching like skeletal hands. I dropped to my knees, the necklace glinting in the moonlight. "I'm sorry," I cried out, my voice breaking. "I didn't mean to disturb you." With trembling hands, I placed the necklace back at the base of the tree. The moment it touched the ground, the air around me shifted. The shadows receded, and the anguished cries faded into a haunting silence. I felt a wave of warmth wash over me, as if the spirits were finally finding peace. But the apparition of the woman remained, her expression softening. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice now a gentle breeze. "You've given us hope." As the moonlight bathed the clearing in silver, I felt the weight of the curse lift. The forest around me began to change. The trees straightened and the darkness receded. I looked up to see the woman smile, a fleeting glimpse of relief in her hollow eyes. But before I could say anything, she vanished, leaving only a gentle rustle of leaves behind. The forest was alive again, the shadows retreating into the corners of the clearing. I stood alone, heart racing, breathless but relieved. As I made my way back home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I would carry the midnight forest with me forever, a reminder of the lives intertwined with its shadows and the secret that lay hidden beneath the surface. The forest was thick with fog, wrapping around the trees like ghostly fingers. I had always loved hiking, but today felt different. An unsettling pressure hung in the air, as if the woods were holding their breath. As I trudged deeper into the wilderness, I stumbled upon an old cabin, half hidden by overgrown vines and shadowed by towering pines. It stood there, weathered and forgotten, a relic from another time. Something about it called to me, an inexplicable urge to step inside and uncover its secrets. I hesitated for a moment, recalling the local legends, stories of travelers who vanished near this very spot, lured by the whispers of the forest. But curiosity won over caution. As I pushed open the creaking door, it groaned in protest, like a warning I chose to ignore. The interior was dim, illuminated only by slivers of light filtering through broken windows. Dust motes danced in the air, and a musty smell filled my nostrils. It felt as if the cabin had been frozen in time, a snapshot of a life long abandoned. I stepped inside, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and dread. Old furniture lay scattered, covered in a thick layer of dust. An overturned chair, a cracked mirror, and a fireplace choked with ashes whispered tales of the past. But it was the eerie silence that unsettled me most. No creaks from the floorboards, no rustling of leaves outside. Just a profound stillness that pressed against my ears. As I explored, I found a staircase leading to an upper level. The boards creaked beneath my weight, echoing through the house like a warning bell. I reached the landing and was met with a narrow hallway lined with doors, each one closed and ominous. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to turn back. But the allure of discovery pushed me forward. I opened the first door, revealing a small bedroom. The bed was unmade, sheets yellowed with age, and a child's toy lay forgotten in the corner. As I stepped inside, I felt an icy draft sweep through the room, sending chills down my spine. I turned to leave when I heard it, a soft, faint whisper that seemed to come from the walls. Help me. I froze, my heart pounding. The voice was so weak, so filled with despair. Who's there? I called out, my voice trembling. Silence enveloped me, thick and suffocating. I shook my head, convincing myself it was my imagination. I had to leave. The cabin was not a place for the living. I rushed back down the stairs, but as I reached the bottom, I heard it again, a soft whimpering echoing from the other side of the cabin. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I followed the sound. It led me to a door at the far end, one I hadn't noticed before. The moment I touched the doorknob, a wave of cold washed over me, and the whispers grew louder, more frantic. I swung the door open, and the darkness inside swallowed me whole. I stepped into what appeared to be a storage room, the air stale and heavy. My flashlight flickered, casting shadows that danced along the walls. In the corner, I saw something, a figure huddled beneath a pile of old blankets. "Who are you?" I whispered, stepping closer. The figure slowly lifted its head, revealing hollow eyes and a gaunt face drenched in fear. "Please, help me," it croaked, voice trembling. My heart raced as I realized this wasn't a trick of the light. I was looking at a child, no older than 10, trapped in this forsaken cabin. "How long have you been here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," the child replied, tears streaming down their face. "They won't let me go. They're angry." Who won't let you go?" I pressed, panic rising in my chest. "The shadows, they come at night. They take people who find this place." The child's voice quivered with fear. "You should leave. You're in danger." Just then, the temperature dropped sharply, and I felt an oppressive presence press against me. The walls seemed to close in, and the whispers turned to a cacophony of cries. "Leave now. Leave before it's too late." I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, trapping us inside. The shadows in the room began to writhe and twist, forming dark shapes that loomed closer, their voices rising in a frantic chorus. "You shouldn't have come here." I grabbed the child's hand, pulling them towards the door. "We need to get out. Hold on to me." I yanked on the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as the shadows swirled around us, their icy fingers brushing against my skin. "Please," I screamed, desperation clawing at my throat. "I just want to help you." As if responding to my plea, the shadows hesitated for a moment, and I felt a flicker of hope. "You must return what was taken," the child whispered urgently. "The echoes of the cabin, they hold the answer." In that instant, I remembered the old furniture, the broken mirror. I dashed to the far corner of the room, searching for anything that seemed out of place. My fingers brushed against the dusty surface of the mirror, and I saw it. A fragment of glass missing from the frame, a piece that had been taken long ago. I ripped the mirror off the wall, revealing a hidden compartment filled with dusty trinkets and memories of the past. I reached inside and found a small, ornate box, intricately carved with symbols I didn't recognize. The moment I touched it, the shadows recoiled, as if stung by my presence. "Return it," the child urged, their voice a frantic whisper. "Now!" I held the box tightly, feeling the shadows surge forward once more. I rushed to the door, my heart pounding as I slammed the box against it. "Let us out," I shouted, pounding it against the wood. With a deafening crack, the door flew open, and the shadows screamed in rage. I pulled the child through the threshold, and we stumbled into the light of the cabin's main room. The air was thick with tension, but the darkness began to recede, shrinking back from the doorway. "Go," the child cried, pushing me forward. "Leave now." I ran, pulling the child with me as we burst outside into the moonlight. The forest felt alive, the trees whispering a warning as we sprinted back toward the path. Behind us, the cabin trembled, the shadows swirling in a violent frenzy as if the very structure was collapsing under their rage. Finally, we reached the tree line, and I dared to glance back. The cabin stood silent now, its windows dark and unwelcoming. The whispers faded into the wind, and a sense of peace washed over the forest. The child, now free from the cabin's grip, turned to me with wide, grateful eyes. "Thank you," they whispered, a soft smile breaking through their fear. "You saved me." I felt a rush of relief, but the memories of that night would haunt me forever. The echoes of the abandoned cabin and the darkness that dwelled within. As I led the child back to safety, I knew I would never forget the secrets hidden in those woods. The moment I set foot on the grounds of Oakwood Manor, a chill ran down my spine. The sprawling estate loomed before me, shrouded in an eerie mist that clung to the air like a shroud. It had been years since I inherited the manor from my estranged uncle, a man I barely knew, but the stories surrounding his death were too compelling to ignore. As I approached the grand entrance, the heavy oak doors creaked open, as if welcoming me into the depths of its secrets. Dust motes danced in the dim light, swirling like lost spirits. I stepped inside, my heart pounding with anticipation and unease. Shadows flickered along the walls, and the air felt thick with history, some of it dark and twisted. The first night passed uneventfully, but as the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt an unsettling presence creeping through the corridors. The house seemed alive, whispering tales of sorrow and regret. I brushed it off as nerves, reminding myself that I was here to uncover the truth about my uncle's mysterious demise. On the second night, I was jolted awake by a low, mournful wail echoing through the halls. I sat up in bed, my heart racing. The sound was distant, yet hauntingly familiar, pulling at the edges of my memory. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, the chill of the floor sending shivers up my spine, and crept toward the source of the noise. As I stepped into the hallway, the air grew colder, wrapping around me like a ghostly embrace. The wailing intensified, guiding me down the dimly lit corridor. I approached a door at the end, one I had yet to explore. It stood slightly ajar, darkness spilling from the gap like an invitation. With a shaky breath, I pushed the door open. The room was cloaked in shadows, but the moonlight streaming through the window illuminated an old rocking chair, gently swaying back and forth. Heart pounding, I stepped inside. The wailing ceased, replaced by an oppressive silence that wrapped around me like a noose. Suddenly, the chair stopped, and I felt a cold breeze brush past me. I turned, and there she was, a woman in a white dress, her hair cascading like a waterfall of shadows. Her eyes were hollow, filled with an unfathomable sorrow. "Help me," she whispered, her voice echoing in the stillness. "He won't let me go." I stumbled back, fear clawing at my throat. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. "I am Eliza," she replied, her gaze piercing through the darkness. "I was trapped here long ago, trapped by the same evil that took your uncle." Her voice trembled, and I could see the pain etched on her spectral face. "What happened?" I asked, my curiosity overpowering my fear. Eliza's tale poured forth, a haunting narrative of love and betrayal. She had been my uncle's lover, torn apart by jealousy and anger. The night he died, she had confronted him about his infidelities. In a fit of rage, he had killed her and hidden her body beneath the floorboards of this very room. My stomach twisted. "But why are you here? Why don't you leave?" "Because he still haunts this place," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "He cannot rest until he has taken another soul to replace mine. You must help me break the curse." As the realization sank in, I felt the walls of the manor close in around me. The shadows danced menacingly, and I knew I had to confront the darkness that lingered within those walls. "How do I help you?" "Find the truth," Eliza urged. "Uncover his sins, and the spirits trapped here will be freed. But beware, he will try to stop you." With a newfound determination, I left the room, the echoes of Eliza's sorrow resonating in my mind. I spent the next day digging through my uncle's belongings, searching for anything that could unravel the mystery. Old letters, photographs, and journals filled the dusty attic, each piece weaving a tapestry of betrayal, deceit, and despair. As night fell, I felt a presence in the house, a dark energy that pulsed with malevolence. I gathered the courage to confront it, armed with what I had discovered. I returned to the rocking chair room, my heart racing as I faced the shadows that coiled around me. "Show yourself," I demanded. The air crackled with tension, and then he appeared, a dark figure, eyes burning with rage. "You should not have come here," he bellowed, his voice echoing like thunder. "You cannot break what I have created. Your reign of terror ends here." I shouted back, brandishing the letters I had found. "I know what you did. You killed Eliza." His laughter filled the room, chilling me to the bone. She was nothing but a fleeting distraction. Her spirit will never be free. With a surge of adrenaline, I threw the letters at him. They caught fire, igniting with an otherworldly flame that illuminated the room. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in agony as the truth burned away their power. "Leave this place," I cried, my voice strong and resolute. "You will not take another soul." The figure writhed in the light, his form flickering like a candle in the wind. With one final scream, he dissolved into the darkness, leaving behind only silence and the scent of burnt paper. Eliza's spirit appeared before me, her expression a mix of gratitude and relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice now light and free. "You have set me free." As she faded into the light, I felt the weight lift from Oakwood Manor. The oppressive darkness that had consumed the house began to dissipate, replaced by a warmth that filled the air. I stepped outside, the moonlight bathing the manor in a soft glow. In that moment, I knew I had not only uncovered the truth, but had also freed the spirits trapped within its walls. Oakwood Manor would no longer be a place of sorrow. It was now a sanctuary of peace. It all started when I stumbled upon a faded map tucked away in an old book at my grandmother's house. The map depicted a path leading to a place that was marked only with a small, ominous X. Intrigued, I decided to follow it, believing it would lead me to an adventure. But what I found instead was a nightmare lurking in the shadows. After an hour of hiking through thick underbrush and tangled roots, I emerged into a clearing, and there it was, the forgotten graveyard. The air felt heavy, cloying with the scent of decay and damp earth. Tombstones, cracked and leaning at odd angles, jutted out of the ground like broken teeth. Moss clung to the stones, obscuring names and dates, while twisted trees loomed overhead, their branches clawing at the sky. I stepped inside, the crunch of dried leaves underfoot breaking the oppressive silence. A chill ran down my spine, and I glanced around, feeling as though unseen eyes were watching me. The graveyard was eerily still, but an unsettling energy hung in the air, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. As I wandered deeper into the graveyard, I noticed one tombstone that stood apart from the rest. It was larger, more ornate, and the inscription was clearer than the others. It read, "Here lies Margaret Thorne, beloved daughter, taken too soon." A strange sense of familiarity washed over me, as if I had known her in another life. Suddenly, I heard a soft whisper carried on the wind. "Help me." The voice was faint and distant, but it sent shivers coursing through my body. I turned to leave, but the urge to uncover the source of the voice pulled me closer to Margaret's grave. I knelt beside the tombstone, brushing away the moss that had obscured it. As I did, I noticed a small, rusted locket half buried in the dirt. My heart raced with excitement and dread. I picked it up, feeling its cold metal against my skin, and I opened it. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman. Margaret, I presumed, and a man whose face was obscured. "Please." The whisper grew stronger, more insistent. "You must help me." My breath hitched in my throat. "Help you with what?" I asked, my voice trembling as I scanned the graveyard. expecting to see someone lurking in shadows. "Find the truth," the voice urged. "Uncover my story, and I will be free." I looked around, half expecting to see someone emerge from the trees, but the graveyard remained silent, save for the rustling leaves. Compelled by the voice, I decided to dig deeper. I had come this far. Surely I could uncover the mystery of this forgotten graveyard. As I began to dig around the base of the tombstone, the ground felt soft and loose beneath my fingers. I unearthed fragments of wood and metal, remnants of something buried long ago. My heart raced as I uncovered an old, decaying box locked tight. The whispers grew louder, urging me on. "Open it." I fumbled through the dirt for something to pry it open, finally using a rock to force the lid. With a loud crack, the box sprang open, revealing a collection of letters, yellowed with age. I began to read, heart pounding with every word. The letters spoke of a forbidden love affair between Margaret and the man in the photograph, someone from family that had disapproved of their union. They had planned to run away together, but then tragedy struck. Margaret's family had found out, and in a fit of rage, they had taken her life to protect their honor. The final letter sent chills down my spine. It was a warning from Margaret to her lover, warning him to stay away, lest he suffer the same fate. It was clear she had been murdered, her life taken by the very people who were supposed to love her. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew colder, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, dread coiling in my stomach, and saw a shadow standing at the edge of the graveyard. The figure was tall and cloaked in darkness, its features indistinguishable. "You shouldn't have come here," it growled, its voice low and menacing. "You've disturbed the dead." I stumbled back, clutching the letters to my chest as fear gripped me. "I was just trying to help," I stammered, my voice trembling. "Help? You think you can help her?" the shadow hissed, stepping closer. "You will pay for your meddling." The whispers grew frantic, swirling around me like a storm. "Run!" they screamed in unison. "You must leave." I turned and bolted, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I sprinted through the graveyard, the cold breath of the shadow hot on my back. I could feel its presence closing in, the darkness reaching out, trying to ensnare me. As I burst through the entrance, the whispers faded, but the shadow loomed just outside, its eyes burning with rage. "You cannot escape what you have awakened," it roared. I didn't look back. I raced through the woods, branches clawing at me as I pushed deeper into the foliage. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt like I was being hunted, the very essence of the graveyard pursuing me. Finally, I emerged onto the road, gasping for breath. I glanced back, heart racing, but the shadow was gone, leaving only the echo of its wrath behind. I stumbled home, the locket still clutched in my hand, its cold metal a reminder of the horrors I had unearthed. That night, I lay in bed, unable to shake the feeling that I had not escaped the graveyard unscathed. The whispers haunted my dreams, and I could almost hear Margaret's voice calling out to me, forever trapped in the shadows of Oakwood Manor. Days turned into weeks, but the weight of the graveyard lingered on my soul. I had uncovered the truth of Margaret's tragic end, but in doing so, I had awakened something dark and ancient. The whispers never ceased, echoing in my mind, a reminder of the forgotten graveyard that would forever haunt my thoughts. The night was unusually quiet, the kind of stillness that coats the world in an eerie blanket. I had just moved into the old Victorian house at the end of Willow Lane, a place rumored to be haunted, but I dismissed the tales as mere folklore. As a writer seeking inspiration, I was determined to turn this house into my sanctuary. After unpacking the last of my boxes, I settled into the study, the dim light casting long shadows across the room. I pulled out my journal, eager to write, when I heard it for the first time, a soft, haunting melody drifting through the air. It was a lullaby, sweet yet chilling, echoing from the attic above. Curiosity piqued. I set my journal aside and listened intently. The lullaby was both beautiful and unsettling, each note curling around my heart like a vine. I felt an inexplicable urge to follow the sound, so I climbed the creaking staircase, my pulse quickening with each step. As I reached the attic door, I hesitated. The melody grew louder, pulling me in like a siren's call. I pushed the door open, and a gust of cold air rushed past me, carrying the scent of dust and something else, something metallic. The attic was dimly lit, the moonlight barely penetrating the grime-covered windows. Old trunks and forgotten toys lay scattered about, remnants of a time long past. But it was the rocking chair in the corner that caught my attention. It swayed gently, despite the absence of a breeze, and the lullaby danced through the air like a whispering ghost. "Hello," I called out, my voice tremulous. The lullaby continued, unaffected by my presence. I approached the rocking chair, heart pounding, and as I did, the melody shifted, becoming more frantic, tinged with sorrow. Suddenly, the music stopped, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. My breath caught in my throat. I turned to leave, but a soft giggle echoed behind me, sending chills racing down my spine. I whirled around, expecting to find a child hiding in the shadows, but the attic was empty. "Who's there?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. No answer came, just the echo of my own voice. I took a step back, the hair on my arms standing on end, when the lullaby resumed, this time more haunting, almost pleading. "Stay with me," it seemed to say. Against my better judgment, I approached the rocking chair again. As I reached out to touch it, a vision flashed before my eyes. A little girl with wide, sad eyes, clutching a worn teddy bear, sitting in the chair, humming the lullaby. My heart ached for her, but before I could process what I had seen, the vision faded, leaving me gasping for breath. I stumbled back, my mind racing. Who was she? Why was she here? I felt a deep sense of sadness wash over me, mingling with the dread that lingered in the attic. I needed to know more. Over the next few days, the lullaby haunted my thoughts. I found myself drawn back to the attic, each visit revealing more visions of the girl. The same sad eyes, the same teddy bear, always humming that chilling lullaby. It was as if she were trying to tell me something. Determined to uncover the truth, I began researching the history of the house. I discovered that the previous owners had lost their daughter, Clara, many years ago, an accident that left the family shattered. They had moved away, leaving the house abandoned, but Clara's spirit lingered, trapped in the attic, singing her lullaby for eternity. The more I learned, the more I felt a connection to Clara. I started to write about her, pouring my heart into the pages of my journal, trying to give her a voice. But each night, the lullaby grew more urgent, more desperate, as if Clara was begging for release. One night, I awoke to the sound of the lullaby echoing through the house, louder and more frantic than ever before. Heart racing, I leapt from bed and rushed to the attic. The door creaked ominously as I pushed it open, and the cold air enveloped me like a shroud. But this time, the rocking chair was still, and the attic was eerily silent. My heart pounded in my chest as I searched the shadows, but Clara was nowhere to be found. Panic settled in my stomach. What had happened to her? Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper, "Help me." My breath caught, and I turned to the corner of the attic. There, in the shadows, stood Clara, her ghostly figure illuminated by the pale moonlight. Her eyes, once filled with sadness, now glimmered with something else, desperation. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I need to be free." Without thinking, I stepped closer. "How can I help you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Sing with me," she urged, reaching out a translucent hand. "Only then can I rest." My heart raced as I grasped her hand, feeling a chill wash over me. I began to sing the lullaby, my voice shaking at first, but as I continued, Clara joined in, her ethereal voice weaving with mine. The melody filled the attic, echoing through the walls, building to a haunting crescendo. But something shifted, the air thickening with an oppressive dread. I realized too late that I had awakened something darker. The shadows in the attic began to swirl around us, pulling at my limbs, as if the very walls were alive with rage. "No!" I screamed, trying to pull away, but Clara's grip tightened. "You promised." The shadows surged forward, and I felt myself being drawn into their depths. Clara's face twisted in anguish. "Help me. Don't let them take you." With every ounce of strength, I fought against the darkness, but it was too late. The lullaby turned into a discordant wail, reverberating through the attic as I was engulfed by the shadows. The last thing I remember was Clara's terrified gaze, her voice fading into the darkness. "Help me. Now, I'm trapped here, forever singing the chilling lullaby that echoes through the halls of this forgotten house, waiting for someone to hear my plea, to join me in the darkness." The night was drenched in an unsettling crimson glow as the blood-red moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie light over the small town of Millbury. I had heard the legends whispered in hushed tones, the tales of sacrifices made beneath the blood-red moon, of ancient rituals that promised power and prosperity. But those were just stories, right? Just folklore to scare children and keep them in line. I should have known better. As a journalist, I was drawn to the supernatural, the unexplained. When I received an anonymous tip about a gathering in the woods, I felt a thrill of excitement. This could be my chance to uncover the truth behind the legends. I grabbed my camera and set out into the night, the air thick with anticipation. The moon hung like a bloodstain against the velvet sky, illuminating the twisted branches of the trees as I made my way deeper into the woods. A chill ran down my spine, and the whisper of the wind felt almost like a warning. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was just being paranoid. As I approached a clearing, I heard the low murmur of voices. I crouched behind a thick bush and peered through the branches. There, in the moonlight, stood a circle of hooded figures, their faces concealed in shadow. They held candles that flickered like dying stars, casting eerie shadows on their robes. In the center of the circle lay an altar, and my heart sank when I saw the glint of metal, sacrificial knives glimmering in the moonlight. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, but I couldn't look away. The figures began to chant in unison, their voices rising and falling like a dark hymn. I fumbled for my camera, ready to capture the moment, but just as I pressed the shutter, A twig snapped beneath my foot. The chanting stopped abruptly, and the figures turned in unison, their heads tilting as if they could sense my presence. Panic surged through me. I turned to flee, but before I could take a step, a voice rang out, deep and resonant. "Come forth, seeker of truth." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. They knew I was there. I took a shaky breath and stepped into the clearing, my camera hanging limply at my side. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The hooded figure who had spoken stepped forward, lowering their hood to reveal a face that was both beautiful and terrifying. "You seek answers, do you not? The blood-red moon calls to those who are lost, and you are here for a reason." I swallowed hard, my instincts screaming at me to run. I just wanted to understand the stories. "Stories are but echoes of the truth," the figure replied, their voice smooth as silk. "Tonight, we perform a ritual to appease the spirits of the forest, to ensure prosperity for our town. But we require a sacrifice." My breath quickened. "A sacrifice?" The figure nodded, eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. "Your presence here is a sign. You were chosen." "Chosen?" I stammered, the weight of their words crashing down on me. "I'm not part of this." The other figures began to close in around me, their chanting starting again, more fervent this time. The air grew thick with tension, and I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet. "You cannot escape your destiny," the figure said, raising a hand. In a burst of adrenaline, I turned and ran, dodging between the trees as the chanting intensified behind me. The blood-red moon seemed to pulse with every beat of my heart, illuminating my path, but also revealing the figures that pursued me. The forest was alive with their cries, echoing in the night like a twisted symphony. I could hear footsteps behind me, growing closer, a chilling reminder of my impending doom. I stumbled over roots and rocks, the darkness closing in around me. My lungs burned, but I couldn't stop. I had to escape. Finally, I burst into a small clearing, the moonlight spilling over me like a blanket. I looked around frantically, searching for a place to hide. My eyes landed on an old, crumbling stone well at the edge of the clearing. Without thinking, I dove inside, the darkness enveloping me as I hit the bottom with a thud. I pressed my back against the cold stone wall, heart racing, listening to the sounds of the forest above. I could hear the hooded figures searching for me, their voices echoing like a haunting song. "She cannot hide from us," one whispered. "The blood-red moon demands her." The whispers faded, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they would give up and leave. But as I sat in the darkness, the ground beneath me began to tremble again, and I felt a cold breeze sweep through the well, sending chills down my spine. Suddenly, I heard it, the lullaby, soft and melodic, drifting down from above. It was the same haunting tune the figures had chanted, and it filled me with dread. I pressed my hands over my ears, trying to block out the sound, but it seeped into my mind, echoing with a terrifying clarity. "Come to us," it sang, a voice both sweet and sinister. "Join us beneath the blood-red moon." I could feel the pull of the melody, wrapping around my thoughts like a vine. I fought against it, but the darkness was closing in, and I could feel my resolve weakening. The well felt suffocating, and I realized that I was trapped, not just in the well, but in the nightmare that had become my reality. In a moment of sheer desperation, I climbed to my feet and began to claw my way up the stone walls, determination fueling my every movement. I had to escape, had to break free from whatever fate awaited me. As I reached the top, the chilling lullaby crescendoed, and I felt hands gripping my ankles, pulling me down. With one final surge of strength, I broke free and tumbled out of the well, landing hard on the forest floor. I scrambled to my feet and ran, the moonlight guiding my way as I dashed through the trees. The chilling lullaby faded behind me, but I could still feel the eyes of the figures watching, waiting for my return. I burst through the edge of the woods and into the town, gasping for breath. The blood-red moon loomed overhead, a constant reminder of the horrors I had encountered. I had escaped the ritual, but I knew I could never truly escape the darkness that lurked beneath its glow. From that night on, the blood-red moon would haunt my dreams, a chilling lullaby whispering in the shadows, reminding me that some stories should remain buried, because beneath the blood-red moon, I was never truly free.